Chapter 1379. Zhong Tang did not seem to be afraid of all this. He madly rushed into the sacrificial beast. Long Chen was behind him with a divine light, and his brows were tightly knitted. He had given Zhong Tang enough things. Zhong Tang had become a deviant god because of the pill. Although he was a mid-stage imperial emperor, he was actually comparable to a late-stage imperial emperor. Even so, Long Chen still felt that there was a change in the situation. The sacrificial beasts had suffered countless casualties, but behind them, there were gradually 3 flames that soared into the sky. Above the flames, the shape of a strange beast raged. Zhong Tang killed more than a dozen heavenly immortals in front of him with a sword. He could not help but stop when he saw this scene. Surprisingly, there was an altar in the middle of the fiery beast. On the altar, there were still 3 iron pillars. The iron pillars were a family of 3, and in the center was a young man. When the young man raised his head, he saw the strange beast roaring and rushing into the man's body. The violent power immediately set off a tsunami-like spiritual power wave. The young man's cultivation went from the Earth Immortal Realm straight to the Imperial Emperor Realm, and then he completely crossed over to the late-stage Imperial Emperor Realm. Rumble. The young man leaped up and crushed the entire altar with a single step. Hundreds of sacrificial beasts in front of him were crushed into powder. Plop, plop. The entire sacrificial beasts knelt on the ground, and they did not dare to raise their heads. The young man only glanced at the sacrificial beasts, then looked at Zhong Tang and Long Chen. His eyes were full of dense green light. "I'll help your clan kill him, and the sacrifice will be doubled for 100 years. The young man's voice was extremely cold, as if he did not care about the lives of the sacrificial beasts at all. He only wanted the sacrifice. Rumble. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed toward Zhong Tang. Zhong Tang's expression changed drastically, and he frantically used his divine power. The long sword in his hand actually had the shadow of a giant dragon. The 2 attacks collided, but the young man with the beast soul did not take a step back. However, he was shocked, as if he could not believe that Zhong Tang, an imperial emperor, could take his attack. After a brief moment of shock, he attacked wildly again. Zhong Tang was retreating, and he was afraid that he could not hold on much longer. He could not help but ask Long Chen, "Is there a way out now?" Long Chen suddenly rushed out from behind him. This scene truly stunned everyone in the surroundings. No one had thought that Long Chen, an ordinary person, would stand in front of Zhong Tang. The beast spirit was also startled and stopped in its tracks. It also felt a little uneasy, as if it was afraid of a trap. Zhong Tang's expression changed drastically, and he shouted explosively, "Master, what are you doing? You're no match for him in your current state." Long Chen shook his head but did not move an inch. The beast spirit hesitated for a moment, then grinned and revealed a ferocious look in its eyes. A beam of green light shot out from his hand, heading straight for Long Chen. In an instant, endless killing intent and the feeling of impending death filled Long Chen's senses. Right now, he was just an ordinary person. Facing an attack of this level, he would probably die 10,000 times over. Rumble. The light fell and engulfed Long Chen in an instant. Bang. The dense brilliance shattered in an instant. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Zhong Tang rushed in front of Long Chen and blocked Long Chen's body. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth, and half of his body turned into powder. Long Chen, who was blocking behind him, had his entire arm smashed into pieces. Blood was gushing out. How could this be? Long Chen stood in place in a daze, as if he did not feel the pain from his arm. His whole person seemed to be completely sluggish. If Zhong Tang had not blocked this attack, he would have been dead. Could it be that Yun Mei did not send anyone to protect him? This was impossible. He seemed to have sunk into a frenzy of self-doubt. At this moment, Zhong Tang was fighting desperately with his life against the beast spirit. Even so, He still protected Long Chen and did not dare to leave him. Long Chen looked at everything in front of him in a daze. He seemed to have grasped something, but also seemed to have gained nothing. The beast spirit's young man grabbed Zhong Tang's long sword and crushed it into pieces, and his whole body was smashed into the ground. At this moment, Zhong Tang was already an arrow at the end of its flight. When he appeared again, only the sword hilt in his hand and part of his body were left, but he still blocked in front of Long Chen. The beast spirit's young man saw this scene and suddenly laughed playfully. I really don't know how the two of you have the guts to break into this clan. Maybe you have reinforcements behind you, but this place has completely disappeared from its original place the moment the sacrifice started. Today is the day you die. If you have anything else to say it quickly. Bang! Zhong Tang's strength was beyond his understanding, but the gap between their realms could not be made up. It was not that he did not want to kill Zhong Tang directly, but he did not want to take his dying counterattack. He attacked one after another, as if he wanted to use 100 more breaths to kill Zhong Tang. Zhong Tang used all his strength to fight back, but the corner of his mouth suddenly smiled. He seemed to feel that Long Chen was in some kind of pain and said, "Master, don't blame yourself. Today, Zhong Tang is very happy. If it were not for you, I would not have been able to reach this step in my life. Today, Zhong Tang's biggest regret is that I did not have the strength to protect you." Zhong Tang's voice fell. Long Chen's body began to age in an instant. Streaks of purple light wreaked havoc all around him, as if lightning was circling around him. The terrifying aura caused the entire space to begin to shake. For a moment, even the beast spirit youth suddenly stopped attacking, and stared at Long Chen in horror. The people of the sacrificial beast clan all went limp on the ground. They could feel that even a trace of the purple light was enough to crush the entire space, and crush everything in this place. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen was already on the verge of death. He stared at Zhong Tang and said, "This is not your fault. On the contrary, I have harmed you. My Tao heart is about to completely collapse, but I still do not know where I have gone wrong." His physical body began to crumble inch by inch. Zhong Tang looked at this scene, and his entire body began to tremble. He roared madly, "All of this was my choice. It has nothing to do with Master. Master did not harm me. No, Master, you cannot die. I still need you to guide me in the future. I have chosen this path. Even if I die, it has nothing to do with Master." He looked at Long Chen on the verge of death, and shouted himself hoarse. Long Chen looked at Zhong Tang and recalled the years they had spent together, and felt an indescribable bitterness in his heart. When he heard Zhong Tang's words, he was suddenly stunned. He muttered, "It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. Your own path, your own choice, you have your own path. Then where is my path? What is my Tao heart? Why is my Tao heart collapsing? No, it is not my Tao heart that is collapsing. I have walked on the path of someone else. I understand, ha ha." Chapter 1380. Long Chen's crazy move made everyone look at each other in dismay. They did not dare to move at all. The purple light that had just flowed out of Long Chen's body made their souls tremble. Even an idiot knew that Long Chen was not someone they could provoke. But no one thought that Long Chen would destroy his own body. His body completely turned into powder and disappeared between heaven and earth. The place where he stood was only left with a ball of purple light and a pitch-black brilliance. This brilliance collapsed the moment Long Chen's body was destroyed. Streaks of purple light were like a tsunami that was about to swallow the space in all directions. At this moment, everyone seemed to see the arrival of the end of the world. They could feel the power contained in this ball of purple light. Once it raged, it would not only destroy them, but even a radius of 1,000,000 miles would be completely annihilated. Sizzle. However, just as the purple light was about to pour onto Zhong Tang's body, it suddenly stopped. An illusory figure gradually condensed. The illusory figure was none other than Long Chen. At this moment, there seemed to be a vast golden light floating between Long Chen's eyebrows. It was a palace. He smiled and looked at Zhong Tang, nodding slightly. The terrifying power that was about to wreak havoc behind him was rushing towards him at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhong Tang looked at this scene in a daze. He whispered to Long Chen, "Master, how can your soul withstand such a terrifying power? I remember you said that you cultivated some kind of technique that merged your soul and body into one?" Long Chen did not answer. Instead, he grabbed at the air with his right hand. The endless brilliance from all directions rolled back into his soul like a tide. His fleshly body condensed again in an instant. Zhong Tang was completely stunned by this miraculous power. They saw Long Chen's body turn into powder with their own eyes. Long Chen actually regenerated his body in a flash. If the body was not completely crushed, it was not difficult to regenerate it. But if it was completely crushed, it was almost impossible to regenerate the original body. However, Long Chen was able to do just that. When Long Chen saw Zhong Tang's astonishment, he said indifferently, "Didn't you ask me why I have a godly soul and what realm I am in? Your master, I am the successor of the current ancient saint world's lord. Right now, I'm already a titled monarch lord of this world." Rumble. At Long Chen's command, the winds and clouds in the entire space changed color, and the heavens and earth began to crumble. The entire ancestral land of the sacrificial beasts seemed to have traversed space and floated above the sky in an instant. Beneath their feet was the ancestral land of the clan. Zhong Tang stood there in a daze, completely dumbfounded. He didn't even have time to recover his broken body. Long Chen walked in front of him and patted his body, restoring it to its original state. He looked at the young man with the beast soul in the distance. The beast soul was about to leave the boy's body and escape, but before it could move, it was completely crushed into powder. The sacrificial beasts didn't even dare to raise their heads as they frantically kowtowed on the ground. Titled Emperor Lord. Just these 4 words were enough to shatter their gut. A titled Emperor Lord was a supreme expert in the ancient Saint Divine world who could compete for the position of Realm Lord. Even if they slaughtered the entire divine race within the Blessed Land's sphere of influence, it would be a piece of cake. They didn't expect a reclusive clan to be related to such a person. Moreover, why would such a person be on the mainland? Shouldn't he exist in the chaotic starry sky? Long Chen looked at the crowd of sacrificial beasts and finally shook his head. With a wave of his hand, threads appeared out of thin air as he murmured, "Kill all of you who are related to the death of Zhong Tang's family. The rest of you, take care of yourselves." After he finished speaking, Long Chen directly disappeared from the spot with Zhong Tang. Just as he left, hundreds of sacrificial beasts died unnatural deaths. These people were all involved in killing Zhong Tang's family. There were even some who only came up with the plan and didn't even leave the ancestral land. When the sacrificial beasts saw that Long Chen and Zhong Tang had completely left, they hurriedly used their methods to streak across the sky and leave the mountain range where the clan was located. After this incident, they probably didn't even dare to stay within the Blessed Land's sphere of influence. When Long Chen reappeared with Zhong Tang, they had already returned to the clan. When Zhong Shan saw the 2 of them return, he immediately rushed up and scolded the 2 of them. "Where did the 2 of you go this time?" There was a movement in the space where the sacrificial beasts were. "I thought you 2 were dead." When Zhong Tang saw this scene, he hurriedly rushed up and pulled Zhong Shan. "Uncle Zhong Shan, don't say any more. I'll tell you about it bit by bit." "What are you talking about? Hurry up and go back. Long Chen, you have to look after him this time." Long Chen looked at Zhong Shan and nodded with a smile. He even gave Zhong Tang a meaningful look before saying, "Brother Zhong Shan, don't worry. He won't be in trouble in the future." The sacrificial beasts seemed to have left this place. "Brother Zhong Shan, I came back today to say goodbye. I may be leaving. When Zongshan heard that Long Chen was leaving, he immediately became serious. He glared at Zongtang and said, Brother Long Chen, why are you leaving? If you think Zongtang is difficult to look after, I'll come personally in the future. With his cultivation, he couldn't see the changes in Long Chen at all. Instead, he felt that Zongtang's aura was somewhat stronger. Long Chen shook his head and replied with a smile, I still have a lot of things to do. I'll leave after saying goodbye today. As he spoke, Long Chen had a pool of strong liquor in his right hand. When Zongshan saw this, he was stunned. You have cultivation. No wonder you want to leave. I knew you were extraordinary. As Zongshan spoke, he had already taken the liquor in Long Chen's hand. When Zongtang saw that Long Chen had no intention of giving him the liquor, he took out a jar for himself. Zongshan and Long Chen looked at Zongtang and couldn't help laughing out loud. At the same time, Zongshan and Zongshan didn't know that the two divine emperors were in the sky above their clan. They had been following Long Chen and Zongtang, but they had been confused by the power of the sacrificial beast divine clan. When they realized what had happened, the entire clan had disappeared. This situation shouldn't have happened. They could only blame themselves for being too careless. When they came back, they found that they couldn't spy on Long Chen. They couldn't even move 10 meters away from him. They could still feel Zongtang's aura, but they couldn't sense Long Chen at all. The leader of the group said with a pale face, What happened here? Why do I feel that the world has frozen and we're trapped here? That Long Chen can't be dead, right? If so, we'll be in big trouble when we return to Shanghai City. We were too careless. How could such a reclusive clan have a teleportation formation? Don't think about it. Let's leave this place quickly. We'll capture Zongtang and ask him who trapped us here. Is there a late divine emperor? Chapter 1381. Seeing Long Chen suddenly appear behind them, the two immortal emperors subconsciously took a few steps back. Long Chen was no different from an ordinary person in front of them, but he was standing in the air beside them. There was only one explanation: Long Chen's cultivation was much higher than theirs. Their faces were a little stiff, and they hurriedly nodded and bowed. The leader asked in a low voice, Since Senior has said goodbye, you must also go to Shanghai City. Long Chen nodded. Seeing Long Chen nod, the two were ready to leave, but before they moved, the scene in front of them changed rapidly, and they were already in Shanghai City. The two looked at Long Chen in horror, and they didn't dare to raise their heads again. Long Chen looked at them, shook his head and said with a smile, You don't have to be like this. If you weren't careless, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to see what's wrong with my Taoist heart. After that, Long Chen moved his right hand, and two beams of divine light fell between their eyebrows and disappeared without a trace. Then he turned around and walked to Unmei Er's room. The two immortal emperors stood there in a daze, and their backs were already wet with cold sweat. No matter how polite and courteous Long Chen was, his actions had already exceeded their understanding. The two immortal emperors didn't even have the courage to move in front of Long Chen. The divine light Long Chen sent between their eyebrows didn't allow them to say anything, let alone resist. Who on earth have we been following these days? He gave us each a beam of origin energy, which is enough to improve our cultivation. Long Chen's action could be considered as cutting off the karma. Yunmei and Qing Xian saw Long Chen push the door open and come in, and they hurriedly went to greet him. The two of them were close to Long Chen. With just a few glances, they immediately noticed that Long Chen was different. His expression and temperament seemed to have changed. Qing Xian hurriedly asked, Young master, have you really recovered your Taoist heart? Long Chen nodded. Only then did the two of them relax. They knew that if Long Chen's Tao heart continued to dissipate, he would die from his own power. Long Chen looked at the two of them and smiled. Actually, the two of you have already noticed the changes in me after I lost my Tao heart. However, you know that even if you told me, I wouldn't believe you. As they spoke, the three of them sat down. Long Chen began to tell the two of them about his experience with Zhong Tang and the others. In fact, he had not made any progress in the past few years. He had even forgotten what his own Dao heart was, but he saw his own shadow in Zhong Tang. The battle of the sacrificial beast race. If it was in the past, under the circumstances where he didn't know the full strength of the other party, he would absolutely not take the risk to let Zhong Tang charge in with the cultivation of a mid-stage imperial emperor and put himself in danger. Did Long Chen really not think that there might be an accident? Did he not see any clues from the sacrificial beast's sacrificial altars, even if it was just a guess? Not really. Instead, he placed his hopes on the two God Kings who were protecting him. He subconsciously felt that no matter how the situation was investigated, he and Zhong Tang would not die. Accurately speaking, he even placed his hopes on unveil. He believed that unveil would send experts to protect him. This thought of placing his hopes on others almost caused him and Zhong Tang to lose their lives. If Zhong Tang didn't reveal his true feelings when he saw that he was about to die, allowing Long Chen to see his past self in Zhong Tang, he might really be dead now. In the chaotic starry sky, he used the primal chaos dragon bone crazily. His state of mind had suffered an unprecedented blow. It was as though as long as he had the primal chaos dragon bone, he would be able to rule over the various god races. He even wanted to use the primal chaos dragon bone to directly head to the primal chaos domain to revive Yi Hailon. Until he met that purple-haired man. The purple-haired man sealed all of his cultivation. Even the remnant soul of a realm lord couldn't communicate with him. That purple-haired man saved him and pointed out a path for him. Perfect his Dao heart and step into the titled emperor stage, or die. Long Chen's Dao heart was already perfect. The moment his fleshly body was destroyed, he completely understood the path he should take. A path he chose. A path he couldn't blame anyone for. The three of them looked at each other speechlessly. They just leaned on each other like that. Whether it was Qing Xian or Yun Mei'er, they were very clear that Long Chen was about to leave. That titled Emperor Lord who had been hiding in the Primal Chaos Domain's stone forest was waiting for him. The three of them sat like that. After several hours, Long Chen smiled and stood up. I'm going to leave. Take care of yourselves. After saying that, Long Chen extended his hand and passed 3 purple pearls to Qing Xian. After Qing Xian received the 3 purple pearls, Long Chen's figure had already disappeared. This extra pearl was naturally given to Zhan Lanyue. Although Zhan Lanyue wasn't willing to leave the clan, Long Chen had never forgotten about her. However, he didn't have the intention to meet Zhan Lanyue. If he met her at this juncture, it would only increase her danger. Moreover, he could still see Yi Hailon's shadow in Zhan Lanyue. Yi Hailon would forever be a regret that he couldn't make up for in his previous life. Long Chen disappeared without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already in the Primal Chaos Domain underground. The Primal Chaos Domain looked almost the same as the last time he was here. It was still filled with humans. Not long after he stepped into the Primal Chaos Domain, a woman appeared in the distance. This was the person he killed the last time he stepped into the Primal Chaos Domain. The woman flew in front of Long Chen and said, "My master has been waiting for a long time. He would like to invite you to drink some wine." This time, Long Chen still ignored her. Long Chen walked step by step towards the stone forest. With every step he took, the humans within a radius of tens of thousands of miles would turn into dust and disappear without a trace. After these people died, their souls didn't even dissipate. Long Chen didn't feel guilty at all. It was as though he didn't do anything. His casual stroll was already filled with killing intent. Inside the stone forest, countless light pillars started to move. The figures of ghost slaves started to appear. In the middle of the pillars was the purple-haired man. This man looked at Long Chen from afar. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with excitement and agitation. A titled monarch lord. You destroyed your own fleshly body to rebuild your Tao heart. You are indeed worthy of the title of ancient sage. His voice rumbled and turned into purple waves that surged towards Long Chen. In an instant, the purple waves shattered the entire primal chaos domain. The corpses left behind by the various races in the primal chaos domain were all turned into dust. Even the space was shattered. As far as the eye could see, there was only a boundless void. Long Chen didn't change at all. He continued to walk forward. He stepped on the purple waves as though he was walking on flat ground. His figure would disappear and reappear at times. Boundless astral winds wreaked havoc in the void. When his feet landed on the ground, the astral winds instantly stopped. Chapter 1382. This cup of wine is for you. The wine cup had already been raised, but the purple hair didn't do anything. He only smiled and stared at Long Chen. Long Chen drained his cup, stared at him and said, "Seems like you didn't invite me to drink wine, but to celebrate someone else becoming a titled emperor like you." The moment he finished speaking, the purple hair laughed heartily. He seemed to be overjoyed as he drained his cup. Long Chen didn't bother about him. He raised his cup again, and the two drank 3 cups. The purple hair man's eyes lit up as he said, "You've guessed my background? Then you should know that I'm not only helping you, but also myself." Long Chen shook his head and revealed a smile. He looked at the purple-haired man and said, "You helped me suppress my cultivation and gave me a chance to reconstruct my Tao heart. It was all for the sake of helping me become a titled emperor. You wanted me to become a titled emperor because you wanted to recreate the scene of ancient Saint Lord becoming a sector lord. This also means that even though you became a titled emperor before me, you still haven't found a way to become a sector lord. You want to find a way to become a sector lord from me, so you need me to become a titled emperor too. Even though you're helping yourself, you're also helping me." The purple hair man looked at Long Chen, but his eyes gradually narrowed. His eyes gradually revealed a sharp glint. Long Chen looked at him and laughed coldly. He replied, "Stop pretending. You and I both have the power from Hongmeng. This also means that even if the two of us become sector lords at the same time, we won't be affected by the ancient Saint God world. We're no longer using the power from the ancient Saint God world. We're using the power from Hongmeng. I'll also tell you clearly that the position of a sector lord has nothing to do with how many titled emperors there are." After Long Chen recovered his Tao heart, the sector lord told him everything. After a few years, the sector lord thought through everything in the Dragon Palace. The reason why the purple hair man became a titled emperor before Long Chen and was only a step away from becoming a sector lord was because of the power from Hongmeng. This person was a descendant of Hongmeng. He was the heir of the only person from Hongmeng whom the sector master of the ancient sage's sector killed on the day he perished. This person had always possessed the power of Hongmeng. Therefore, his cultivation and combat prowess could be said to be unprecedented in the ancient sacred celestial realm. He was also a member of the primal chaos divine race, so his speed was naturally much faster than Long Chen's. The purple-haired man didn't expect Long Chen to see through the matter so clearly. He didn't hide anything and snorted, "So what? What I want is to leave this world. Don't you want the ancient sacred divine world? As long as you use all means to reach the realm lord's position, I won't touch a single person from this realm." This person originally wanted to make Long Chen think that there could only be one sector lord in a realm, and make Long Chen use all means to compete with him. Now it seemed that Long Chen already knew all of his thoughts. Long Chen listened to the purple-haired man's words and did not reply. Firstly, he didn't trust this person at all. Secondly, this person's words were actually a threat. With his strength as a titled emperor, it was enough to bring chaos to the entire ancient sacred divine world. Thirdly, this person was so eager to leave the ancient sacred divine world. It wasn't just because of the inheritance. After all, he was a living being born in the ancient sacred divine world. Long Chen's heart was in a mess, but in reality, he was very afraid of this person. The source of his fear wasn't just because of this person's cultivation. It was also because of the inheritance from Hong Meng. This inheritance could allow him to become a titled emperor in a short period of time. It should also contain information about Hong Meng outside of the ancient sacred divine world. He understood Long Chen very well. Long Chen knew nothing about him. He had never even seen what was inside Hong Meng outside of the ancient sacred divine world. Long Chen took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "I agree to your request. However, you must remember your promise. I want the ancient sacred divine world and the power of a realm lord." The purple-haired man raised his cup and drank with Long Chen after hearing Long Chen's word. "My name is Yu Mu. I only have one thought, and that is to leave this world." This person seemed forthright, but Long Chen would never forget how easily this person sealed his cultivation when he came here a few years ago. He definitely wasn't a soft-hearted person to be able to reach his current cultivation. He didn't have any feelings for Long Chen. He was just using him. "If you defeat me, I will tell you how to become a realm lord." Long Chen rose into the air and retreated. His tone was incomparably calm. Yu Mu couldn't help but smile. He looked deeply at Long Chen. Although he received the inheritance of the person from Hong Meng, he was still someone from the ancient sacred divine world. Hence, he had to bear the restrictions of the ancient sacred divine world. He had no clue how to become a realm lord. It was as if a titled emperor lord was the strongest existence in this world. Hence, he thought of the person who inherited the realm lord's inheritance, which was Long Chen. After Long Chen revealed his talent in the ancient sacred divine world and inherited the title of Realm Lord's disciple, he had already walked into his sight. If there was anyone in this world who was closer to becoming a Realm Lord than him, it would definitely be Long Chen. After all, his master was the ancient sacred divine world's lord. He couldn't wait any longer. For so many years, he had been staying in the Sea of Light in the Stone Forest. He created those soulless humans just to deduce the method to become a realm lord. The so-called lives of these living beings were just consciousness that he forcefully wrote. They didn't have any soul to speak of. Buzz. Yu Mu broke through the air and looked at Long Chen from afar. He naturally knew that Long Chen didn't want to defeat him. He just wanted to see how strong he was and make some plans for the future. Although he knew this, he didn't intend to reject. In reality, he couldn't reject at all. Long Chen was his only chance to become a realm lord. If he continued to wait, he didn't know how long it would take for him to comprehend the method to become a realm lord. "Since you want to see my strength, I'll let you see to your heart's content today. Since you also have the power of Hong Meng, you're a rare opponent." The moment he finished speaking, his right hand grabbed the air. A halberd condensed in the air. A vast power instantly spiraled up like a whirlpool. Purple light instantly covered the sky. The halberd seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth. Long Chen stared at this scene and gradually frowned. As expected, the power that this person used wasn't from the ancient sacred divine world. Not only that, his sacred art was completely different from the ancient sacred divine world. Although the two of them both had the power of Hong Meng, the degree to which they used it was completely different. Chapter 1383. Within the chaotic domain, Long Chen and Yu Mu floated in the air. Although neither of them spoke, as time passed, the atmosphere became more and more oppressive. From time to time, a few streams of air would revolve around the two of them. Before the battle started, their auras had already begun. "If we don't get rid of this person, he'll be a threat in the future," the Emperor Lord's remnant soul said in a low voice. "I know." Long Chen raised his eyes slightly. His eyes were filled with seriousness. In the battle of auras just now, he, who had always been courageous, was forced to retreat. To a certain extent, this meant that Yu Mu's use of Hong Meng's power was much better than his, as expected of the true inheritor of Hong Meng. However, Long Chen's eyes gradually sharpened. In a real battle, he still had to use force. Just as Long Chen was about to attack, Yu Mu suddenly released his aura and clapped his hands. Ha ha ha! Not bad, not bad. Yu Mu laughed. The power of a sector lord is indeed strong. You can actually barely compete with my Hong Meng's power. Long Chen retracted his hands and frowned. What are you trying to say? Nothing. It's just that I think you're not using your Hong Meng's power to its full potential. Humph, whether I'm using it to its full potential or not, we'll only know after we fight. You and I both know what we're trying to do. We're just testing each other's power. Since that's the case, there's no need to harm our relationship. How about we make a pact of 3 moves? Yu Mu smiled. His expression was filled with confidence. It was as if everything was under his control. A pact of 3 moves? 3 moves. Yu Mu extended 3 fingers. Let's exchange 3 moves. It'll be obvious who's stronger and who's weaker, right? Come, go ahead. I'll let you make the first move. Oh! Long Chen raised his eyebrows. You're so confident that you'll let me make the first move? Confidence comes from strength. Confidence comes from strength. I know. Long Chen grinned and slowly rose higher into the sky. Then don't regret what you said now. After that, Long Chen opened his hands, and the power of the 9 mythological beast fighting souls was instilled from the chaotic starry sky through the Dragon Palace. Like 9 shining stars, rays of light shot out from the mythological beast fighting souls, and finally merged into Long Chen's right hand. Yu Mu glanced at Long Chen in surprise. He had seen the Divine Beast War Soul before, but the power of Long Chen's Divine Beast War Soul couldn't be compared to back then. Even Yu Mu's expression turned slightly serious. What a powerful aura! However, even if I don't use the power of Hong Meng, I can still easily shatter this move. Is that so? Why don't you come and give it a try? As soon as he finished speaking, the power of the Divine Beast Fighting Soul was injected. Long Chen shot towards Yu Mu and pointed his fist at Yu Mu. His fist, which was enhanced by the Divine Beast Fighting Soul, caused the surrounding space to faintly distort. Yu Mu's pupils shrank. He raised the halberd in his hand and pointed it at Long Chen. Ding! A crisp sound was heard. Originally, it was a collision between physical body and weapon. However, at this moment it was the sound of metal clashing. This meant that Long Chen's fist had been strengthened to the point where it wasn't any weaker than Yu Mu's halberd. Boom! Not long after, the center of the collision set off a huge wave of wind. The mighty force swept out like a typhoon and finally disappeared into nothingness. At this moment, the two of them still hadn't moved. If one observed carefully, they would discover that the collision between the two of them hadn't ended yet. On the tip of Yu Mu's halberd, 2 bright-colored forces were fiercely colliding. Humph! You want to take my halberd? Yu Mu snorted coldly. He suddenly increased the strength of his grip on the halberd. An even more powerful force rushed towards the tip of the halberd. Long Chen's intention was obvious. He didn't stop immediately after the collision. Instead, he continued to inject power into the halberd to seize control of it. The second move would be on the halberd itself. Why, you don't use the power of Hong Meng? Long Chen grinned. There's no need for that. Yu Mu once again increased the output of power. However, even so, the center of the collision was still moving towards the halberd at an indiscernible speed. Of course, these subtle changes couldn't escape the eyes of the two of them. Yu Mu was shocked. He never expected that Long Chen's strength had already reached a level where it was slightly superior to his. Yu Mu gritted his teeth. His aura began to soar. The power of Hong Meng circulated throughout his body and finally formed a powerful force that rushed towards Long Chen. At this point, the halberd had already begun to tremble slightly. It seemed like it couldn't withstand the output of Yu Mu's power of Hong Meng. "Give me break!" Yu Mu roared. The power of Hong Meng poured out and drove away Long Chen's power in an instant. Then, it shot towards Long Chen without slowing down. If this hit landed, even Long Chen wouldn't be able to avoid the fate of death. However, Long Chen obviously wouldn't let him succeed so easily. When he felt that Yu Mu was about to use the power of Hong Meng, Long Chen also mobilized his own power of Hong Meng. However, Yu Mu was still the inheritor of Hong Meng. Long Chen sighed in his heart and could only withdraw his power. You! Good. Very good. Yu Mu drew a spear flower in the air. Purple light flashed and instantly shattered the void beside him. It was as if he was venting his anger. Yu Mu paused and took a deep breath. His tone became calm. "I didn't expect you to force me to use the power of Hong Meng. Right now, I'm more and more interested in how to become the master of a realm. Is that so?" Long Chen smiled and waved his right hand. He seemed to be apologizing, but it was more like he was teasing. "I used 2 moves in a row just now. I'm really sorry for not informing you in advance." Just come at me. I'll take all of them." "Good." Just now, it was a clash of pure strength. From the results, if Yu Mu didn't use the power of Hong Meng, he shouldn't be his opponent. However, once he used the power of Hong Meng, it would be very difficult for Long Chen to win based on his current level of use. Moreover, this was only a clash of strength. If Yu Mu used the power of Hong Meng, the chances of Long Chen losing would be even higher. Hong Meng's power. Should I say that it's worthy of being the inheritor of Hong Meng? Long Chen sighed in his heart. While he was lamenting in his heart, he vaguely found a direction for himself to move forward. However, as of now, Long Chen's right hand grabbed at the void. A long halberd flashing with dazzling light appeared in his hand. At the same time, the 9 divine beast souls roared and danced around Long Chen. "Now, let me see how strong your Hong Meng's power is." Long Chen only wanted to see how terrifying Hong Meng's power was. Chapter 1384. Ha ha ha. "Yu Mu, come and take this." Long Chen laughed loudly. The tip of the halberd shot towards Yu Mu and split into 10 shadows, instantly sealing off all of Yu Mu's escape routes. If someone with a lower cultivation realm were to see this, they would definitely think that 9 of them were fake and had no actual attack power. However, how could they possibly know that the Great Tao was extremely simple? At Long Chen's level of cultivation, he already felt that it was beneath him to use such a method. Even if he used them, he would be seen through by someone of the same level. Therefore, these 10 halberd shadows were all real. Moreover, 9 of them were transformed from divine beast fighting souls. This was the information Long Chen obtained about divine beast fighting souls when he became a titled Emperor Lord. In the past, he could only use divine beast fighting souls to attack. However, now that he had become a true realm lord, he could use divine beast fighting souls as he wished. Therefore, he clearly knew that the strongest power of divine beast fighting souls wasn't their attack power, but their amplification. Just like now, the 9 divine beast fighting souls had transformed into 9 halberd shadows. Don't think that this was a simple 1 + 1 = 2 attack amplification. The divine beast fighting souls were 9 of them as one. When they amplified the halberd at the same time, the power would increase exponentially. In other words, the power of Long Chen's attack was amplified by a few thousand times. Oh no! Yu Mu's heart contracted violently. When Long Chen used this move, he already had a bad feeling. He originally thought that Hong Meng's power alone would be enough to block it. However, from the looks of it now, if he really did that, Yu Mu would have to die today. Here. Hong Meng's heart. Yumu put his palms together and formed a complicated seal. Then, the seal that was infused with Hong Meng's power instantly expanded and turned into a barrier, blocking Yumu behind it. Hong Meng's sacred shield. Protect. As if he didn't trust the defense of a single barrier, Yumu cast a few Hong Meng's defensive techniques and continuously infused Hong Meng's power into the barrier. By the time he was done, Long Chen's halberd had already arrived. As if piercing through a layer of paper, Long Chen's halberd did not receive any resistance at all as it pierced through the first barrier that Yumu had set up. Then, the 10 halberds hit the second barrier. Long Chen once again passed through the barrier, but this time there were 2 halberds. The halberd Shadow's power was exhausted, and it turned back into the divine beast battle soul and returned to Long Chen's body. Even so, Long Chen still brought the other 7 halberd phantoms with him, piercing into the Rain Tomb's final line of defense with a momentum that could destroy mountains and fill the seas. Boom! There was a violent explosion and Rain Tomb's last line of defense was instantly shattered. At the same time, the other 7 pole shadows turned into divine beast fighting souls and merged into Long Chen's body. Only the halberd in Long Chen's hand was still shooting towards Rain Tomb. Heaven-crushing technique. The barrier was forcibly broken, and Yumu only felt a burst of tightness in his chest and shortness of breath. However, in the face of the threat of death, he still forced himself to stay alert and unleashed another spell technique, which blasted toward Long Chen. Humph! Break for me! Long Chen roared angrily, and the halberd's speed suddenly increased by a few notches. A destructive force surged on Long Chen's body, and finally entered the halberd's body. The tip of the halberd flickered with purple light, and from the looks of it, it was going to directly kill Yumu on the spot. Boom! The destructive force instantly engulfed the entire space, and even Long Chen and Yumu's bodies flickered with purple light. It was obvious that they were also affected by the destructive force of the collision. In the instant of the collision, Long Chen and Yumu flew out at the same time. Long Chen barely managed to stabilize his body. In the final collision, even with Long Chen's physique, he felt as if his body was about to be torn apart. An indescribable feeling of discomfort rose in his body, and even the hand holding the halberd began to tremble slightly. It was as if it couldn't bear the weight of the halberd. However, Long Chen wasn't the only one who felt discomfort. Yumu, who was even further away, was in a worse state than him. According to Long Chen's deduction, if he had been just a little slower, he would have definitely died on the spot. Even so, his situation definitely wouldn't be so bad. It was better than Long Chen's. Ha ha! I'm very happy with these 3 moves. Long Chen laughed loudly as he shouted into the distance. This time, it was not only to test Yumu's current state, but also to demonstrate to him. Clap, clap, clap. An almost undetectable clap sounded from afar, and Long Chen's pupils violently contracted as he stared at Yumu, who slowly walked out from the void while clapping. Good. Not bad. As expected of the person I value, you really didn't disappoint me. You. Long Chen was shocked, but he couldn't show any weakness now. His expression instantly returned to normal, and he said indifferently, "You're not bad either. I'm confident that no one in this world can block that attack." Indeed, indeed. If it wasn't for the fact that I was forced to use my trump card in the end, today wouldn't have ended well. So, have you achieved your goal? Can you bring me to the place where I can become a realm lord? Long Chen was silent for a while, and then he said, "Of course, a gentleman keeps his word. Since we've already competed, let's rest for a while, then we'll set off. How about it?" Yumu nodded. "Very well, then I'll wait for you here. Please don't disappoint me, Long Chen." After saying that, Yumu took a deep look at him, then turned around and walked into the depths of the void, finally disappearing. After Yumu left, Long Chen stood in the same spot for a long time, then he lowered his head and looked at his hand. Did Hong Meng's technique really have such terrifying power? This person couldn't be left alive. After making up his mind, Long Chen broke through the void and left. He was already thinking about how to make Yu Mu never return. After Long Chen broke through the void and flew away for about half an hour, the void distorted, and a figure fell out. It was Yu Mu, who had just left. Huff, huff. Yu Mu took a few breaths with difficulty, and looked in the direction that Long Chen flew in with lingering fear. It actually has such power. Yu Mu looked at his trembling hands. It turned out that when Yu Mu was blasted away, he was already injured. However, in order to intimidate Long Chen, he had no choice but to use the forced recovery technique. Although this technique could restore one's state in a short period of time, even if it was a Hong Meng technique, there was a corresponding price to pay. Therefore, Yu Mu suggested that both parties rest for a while before setting off. Otherwise, once the time was up, he would immediately be discovered by Long Chen. At that time, if Long Chen suddenly turned hostile and killed him, he wouldn't care at all. Outside, after all, the two of them didn't have any feelings for each other. They were just using each other. Chapter 1385. 1 month later. Young master, are you really going? Qing Xian tugged at Long Chen's sleeve, her eyes filled with worry. It's fine. Long Chen patted the back of her hand and said, that Yu Mu wants to become the realm master, so he can't do anything to me in a short period of time. Moreover, I already have a plan, so you just have to wait here obediently for me to return. Come. Really? Yes, really. Yun Mei walked forward and grabbed Qing Xian's arm. Let the men do their own things. As women, we just have to obediently stay at home and take care of our husband and children. Haha, Mei gives off the feeling of a good wife and mother. Come on. Yun Mei rolled her eyes at him. I won't say anything else. You have to come back alive to see me, do you hear me? Yes, I promise you. Long Chen smiled and replied. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared into the void. A moment later, in the primal chaos domain, Long Chen quickly flew inside. As if expecting him to come at this time, there was no obstruction this time. Long Chen directly entered. You're here. Yu Mu elegantly picked up a teacup and at the same time used his eyes to signal Long Chen to sit opposite him. Looks like you're still in the mood for leisure. Aren't you the least bit interested in the place where I'm going to take you to become the realm master? Hee, you're joking. Of course I'm interested. However, I've already waited for so long. Do I still care about the time it takes to brew a cup of tea? So, the meaning of your visit today is that we can set off now? Hearing this, Long Chen smiled and said, There's no rush. After the competition that day, my body hasn't completely recovered. Let me rest a little more. Hong Meng's spells are indeed powerful, as expected of the inheritor of Hong Meng. As he spoke, Long Chen stretched his body, but his eyes were fixed on Yu Mu. Yu Mu's hand, which was holding the teacup, paused abruptly. Then, he recovered and said calmly, Hong Meng's sorcery is the origin sorcery of the myriad worlds. Without such power, how can it live up to its name? Long Chen thought for a while and then said, Then, there must be a lot of restrictions when Hong Meng's magic is released in this world, right? Yu Mu glanced at him and snorted coldly. I'm afraid these few sentences aren't enough if you want to test my strength, right? Haha, I've never said that I wanted to test you with just a few words. Since it's like this, then let's set out as soon as possible so as to avoid suspicion. Yu Mu's expression changed slightly. Since that's the case, let's set off. Then follow me closely. After Long Chen finished speaking, he soared into the air and quickly flew towards the edge of the chaotic domain. Yu Mu did not say anything else. He also soared into the air and followed closely behind Long Chen. This flight lasted for an entire month. Just as Yu Mu was about to ask Long Chen impatiently, Long Chen suddenly stopped. He looked ahead and said slowly, We've arrived at the illusory sea. This is... Yumu looked at the boundless sea in front of him in surprise. Although it looked like a very ordinary sea from the outside, the aura and Tao laws faintly emitted from it made Yumu extremely surprised. There's actually such a magical place in the ancient realm. Yumu slowly extended his hand forward. Then, his arm slowly disappeared as if it was swallowed by the void. However, Yumu's arm was not really swallowed. Instead, the Tao laws on the sea were very chaotic, causing the space to distort. Therefore, Yumu's arm was actually still there, but it could not be seen due to the distortion of space. The Tao laws here are very chaotic, especially the Tao law of time, Longchen said slowly. As far as I know, 10,000 years here is only equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. You can cultivate without worry. 10,000 years here is equivalent to 10 years in the outside world? Yumu cried out in surprise, as if he could not believe what he had just heard. It was no wonder. After all, what was the most important thing to cultivators? Cultivation techniques? Sorcery techniques? These were only part of the reason. The most important thing was still time. Especially when it came to becoming a realm lord. Without thousands or even tens of thousands of years of comprehension, it was impossible to succeed. This was also the most precious part of the illusory sea. The illusory sea itself was a treasure. Secondly, Longchen continued, because the Tao laws here are very chaotic, the space's restraint on the Tao laws is very weak. We can easily change the Tao laws in a small area, and this is something only a realm lord can do. Through this method, we can sense the realm lord realm in advance. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in now, Yumu said impatiently. From the looks of it, he could not wait to charge into the illusory sea. I've said everything I need to say. You're on your own now. Longchen shrugged, then flew to the other side of the illusory sea. Seeing that Longchen was about to leave, Yumu hurriedly called out to him, "Hey! Where are you going?" Longchen laughed mockingly. The illusory sea is not a place you can enter just because you want to. Moreover, two people cannot enter the same entrance. I'll go in from the other side and we'll meet inside. Is that so? Yumu looked at him suspiciously. You should know the consequences of lying to me. Before you become a realm lord, I can. Everything I said is true. If you have any doubts, you can follow me. However, whether or not you can enter will depend on your own luck. Yumu looked at Longchen for a while, then flung his sleeve and flew back. No need. I don't think you'd dare to play any tricks. Watching Yumu fly to the other side of the illusory sea, Longchen's lips curled into a mysterious smile, and he flew straight into the depths of the illusory sea. Then, a miraculous scene happened. Wherever Longchen went, the thick fog floating in the illusory sea dispersed as if it had met its nemesis, opening up a path for Longchen. It was as if Longchen was the master of this place. That's right. He was the master. It was true that two people could not enter the same entrance. It was also true that 10,000 years inside was 10 years outside. Longchen was not lying. However, since Longchen knew about the illusory sea, how could he not know how to enter? Moreover, what he did not say was that he could already control the illusory sea to a certain extent. Entering the depths was as easy as taking a stroll in his own backyard. Yumu's wild ambitions had long since been laid bare. But before he successfully entered inside, he still wouldn't act blindly without thinking. Chapter 1386. 5 years after Longchen went in. Longchen, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, slowly opened his eyes and looked in one direction. Was he here? He was much faster than expected. Although 5 years had passed inside, only a few days had passed outside. To be able to break through the fog of the unreal ocean in a few days, one had to admit that Yumu was quite capable. I didn't expect you to be here earlier than me. Before the person could be seen, Yumu's voice was heard. Not long after the voice was heard, Yumu's figure appeared from the fog. I was just lucky. Long Chen didn't even raise his head as he replied. Yumu glanced at Long Chen before focusing his gaze on the surrounding space. Around them, there were faintly discernible air currents that floated past. Wherever the air currents passed, the space would distort before returning to normal. I didn't expect the Tao laws here to be so chaotic, Yumu exclaimed as he looked around. The white airflow from before wasn't a real airflow, it was formed from the time Tao laws here. Generally speaking, Tao laws were formless and shapeless, but for some unknown reason, the illusory ocean's Tao laws had become material because they were too chaotic. This is, Yumu reached out his hand to touch one of the Tao laws. Just as he was about to touch it, he was shocked and quickly retracted his hand. The Tao laws of a realm are so terrifying. Yumu took a few steps back in fear. That was the time Tao law of this realm. If one didn't become a realm lord and gain the recognition of the Tao law, even if they had the strength of a titled emperor lord, they would either wither to death or become a newborn baby before being devoured by the space. Even a titled emperor lord would have to face the Tao. Even if he faced it, he would be unable to withstand a single blow. However, riches and honor were sought from danger. The two of them needed this Tao law to help them achieve the Tao of a realm lord. This is indeed a good place. However, before this, as Yumu spoke, he slowly turned around and looked at Long Chen, who was still sitting cross-legged. Killing intent flashed across his eyes. Yumu walked towards Long Chen. The Hong Meng power in his hand surged and accumulated continuously. It looked like it was about to burst out. After walking for a while, Yumu suddenly realized that something was wrong. After walking for so long, he should have arrived in front of Long Chen by now. The distance between the two did not change at all. Yumu frowned, and the Hong Meng power in his hand quietly dissipated. He still walked toward Long Chen calmly. Don't waste your energy. Long Chen suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Yumu. Two entrances, two different spaces. You can't come to my side. Besides, haven't you noticed the situation around you? Around me? Yumu looked back in confusion and immediately cried out in alarm. He took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. As it turned out, when he was not paying attention, a few strands of time Tao law had silently floated over. There's only chaotic power and Tao law here. Any other power will be repelled. If you use any more power and cause the Tao law here to go berserk, don't blame me for not warning you. Long Chen's voice was heard. He did not warn him out of goodwill. If Yumu caused the Tao law to go berserk, he would not be spared. Although Long Chen wanted to kill Yumu, it was not worth it to sacrifice himself. After he finished speaking, Long Chen did not say anything else. He guided a strand of chaotic power into his body, then used the chaotic power to drag out a strand of time Tao law and began to comprehend it. The process seemed easy, but it was actually extremely dangerous. If there was a slight mistake, Long Chen would die because he came into contact with the Tao law. The entire comprehension process was like dancing on the tip of a knife. Seeing this, Yumu gritted his teeth and sat down cross-legged. He began to seize the time to control the chaotic power and comprehend the Tao law. For a moment, the two of them who were supposed to be fighting each other were quietly cultivating together as if they had been good friends for many years. However, both of them knew that whoever could reach the position of Realm Lord first would be able to dictate the other's life and death. When that time came, they would not have to hide their true intentions anymore. Unknowingly, 1,000 years had passed in the unreal ocean. During the 1,000 years, Long Chen did not dare to slow down his speed of absorbing chaotic power to refine Tao law. He was absorbing a huge amount of chaotic power at every moment, then he would grab more Tao law, comprehend, refine, and finally absorb them. At the same time, Yumu did not slow down his speed. He was almost at the same speed as Long Chen in refining Tao law. Moreover, because his control of Hong Meng's power was better, his speed of refining Tao law was slightly faster than Long Chen's. He should have continued refining like this, but as the saying goes, if you walk by the river often, your shoes will get wet. Even if he was a god, it was inevitable that he would make some mistakes if he maintained a tense state of mind to refine Tao law for 1,000 years. Long Chen was no exception. Just as he was about to absorb a strand of Tao law into his body after refining it, the chaotic power in Long Chen's body suddenly became chaotic. Although it was suppressed by Long Chen in an instant, it also caused a disturbance. The strand of Tao law that had been refined suddenly fluttered. However, this caused it to stick to the other Tao law and was about to be absorbed into his body along with the refined Tao law. Absorbing an unrefined Tao law into his body was no different from digging his own grave. What should he do? Should he give up on the strand of Tao law, or forcefully absorb it? It should be known that refining a strand of Tao law required a few years of time. If he gave up, it would be equivalent to wasting a few years of effort. Although he had the help of the inheritance, Yumu also had the Hongmeng inheritance. Long Chen did not dare to guarantee that he could use the inheritance to shorten the time to become a sector lord faster than Yumu. Long Chen slowly opened his eyes and looked at the Tao law that was about to enter his body with a conflicted expression. It was still not too late to give up now. If he allowed the Tao law to enter his body, there would be no turning back. Long Chen glanced at Yumu again. Through the fog, he could see that Yumu was still absorbing the power of chaos step by step to refine his Tao laws. His movements were smooth like flowing water, giving people the illusion that he could break through to the sector lord realm at any time. Come on. Since he wanted to become a sector lord and become a person who controlled Tao law, how could he be afraid of this tiny strand of Tao law? I am Long Chen. Long Chen clenched his teeth and raised his palm. Mixed with the chaotic power, he slapped the entire Tao law into his body. Chapter 1387. Yumu opened his eyes slowly and stopped his refinement temporarily. He could clearly sense that the surrounding chaotic energy was converging towards a certain direction like a whirlpool, and even he was affected by it. He looked at Long Chen instinctively and saw a scene that made him flabbergasted. Long Chen, who was originally tough and handsome, was gone. Instead, he was replaced by an old man who had one foot in the grave. His face was full of wrinkles, and even the wrinkles on his hands could be seen clearly. Could he have encountered the time Tao law? Yumu guessed the reason immediately. After the shock, he was overjoyed. There's no need for me to make a move and you've already killed yourself. The heavens are really helping me. Ha 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 ha. Yumu laughed arrogantly. He was not worried that Long Chen could hear what he was saying at all. This was because there was only one outcome if one was touched by the time Tao law that had not been refined. He had clearly experienced that feeling when he came in just now. In fact, Long Chen could not hear what Yumu was saying. This was because all his organs had degenerated, and even his divine consciousness seemed to have shrunk as if it had aged. The most terrifying thing was his physical body, which had no vitality at all. Nobody would doubt that Long Chen was dead now. Long Chen was relying on his last bit of willpower to suppress the chaotic energy in his body. This was his last resort. He could only touch the Tao law through the chaotic energy. If he did not have this last bit of control, not to mention whether the chaotic energy would tear his body into pieces, he would turn into ashes because of the time Tao law before that happened. Refine. Long Chen roared in his heart because his body was rapidly aging. He could not even use any strength. He could only rely on his divine consciousness to control the chaotic energy in his body and refine the Tao law. However, it was easier said than done. According to the usual speed, it would take a few years or even more than 10 years to refine a wisp of Tao law into one's body. How could he refine a wisp of Tao law in such a short time? Yumu, who had a panoramic view of the scene, stopped refining. He stood up and laughed. Ha 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 ha. Long Chen, oh Long Chen, I thought you were a character. I didn't expect you to be just an impatient idiot. Using your body to face the Tao Law? You think you're a real sector lord just because you received the sector lord's inheritance? You brought this upon yourself. Ha ha ha. Yu Mu held his chin and looked at Long Chen, who was still making his final resistance. As long as Long Chen was dead, he could cultivate here for as long as he wanted. With Long Chen's death, he would be invincible in this realm. It was only a matter of time before he became a realm lord. Humph. Yu Mu clenched his fists tightly. Both of you will pay the price. Long Chen was still in a cross-legged position. The speed at which he absorbed the chaotic energy had clearly slowed down. In the end, he could no longer feel his body absorbing the chaotic energy. Absorb it from me. Long Chen wanted to roar at the sky. However, he couldn't even lift his finger. All he could do was watch the chaotic energy in his body disappear bit by bit. He watched the Tao Law of time gradually disappear. It corroded his body and eventually his consciousness. What could he do? What could he do? Long Chen hurriedly used his spiritual sense to restrain the chaotic energy in his body so that it would not leak out. At the same time, that wisp of Tao Law had already moved along his meridians towards his spiritual sense. As long as it reached his spiritual sense, Long Chen's life would be over. Stop right there. Long Chen controlled the chaotic energy in front of the Tao Law. The Tao Law paused for a moment. Then, it passed through the chaotic energy and continued moving towards his consciousness. Stop right there. Like a madman, he gathered all the chaotic energy in his body and used it to block in front of the Tao Law. He thought he would be able to resist for a longer period of time. However, he didn't expect the Tao Law to stop for the same period of time. Then, it passed through and continued moving. What's going on? Why, this. The scene of the Tao Law passing through the chaotic energy stunned him. A small portion of chaotic energy only paused for a moment. So many chaotic energies gathered together only paused for a moment. It seemed like the Tao Law didn't pierce through the chaotic energy. Instead, it seemed more like integration. Yes, that's right. Integration. I got it. Long Chen shouted excitedly in his heart. I'm so stupid. The Tao Law and the chaotic energy exist in the same space. The Tao Law exists by relying on the chaotic energy. However, I want to use the chaotic energy to block the Tao Law. In this case, the real solution should be bang. The sound of flesh exploding was heard. Long Chen's body instantly exploded into powder. Of course, this scene didn't escape Yu Mu's eyes. His eyes lit up. He pointed at Long Chen and laughed. Ha ha. Long Chen, you're still dead. I thought you could hold on for a longer period of time. I thought. Yu Mu's words stopped abruptly as if his throat was being squeezed. This was because Long Chen didn't die as he had expected after his body exploded. He could still feel Long Chen's aura. Although it was very weak, it was still very strong. Although it was weak, Long Chen's aura was like a candle flame in a strong wind. In fact, this candle flame wouldn't be extinguished anymore. Buzz. In the next instant, a vortex of chaotic energy that was even more intense than before was formed at Long Chen's location. Countless Tao Laws started to become chaotic and wandered around the entire space. This made things difficult for Yu Mu. He dodged these Tao Laws all over the place. Just like those wizards who danced and prayed in the tribe. Looking at Long Chen's location, the chaotic energy gradually gathered. From a smooth sphere, it gradually formed an outline. Finally, it clearly formed the appearance of a person. Then, the facial features of the chaotic energy appeared. It was Long Chen. I did it, ha ha! Long Chen laughed loudly. He looked at his body, then casually grabbed a Tao Law beside him and swallowed it with a gulp. Yu Mu's eyes instantly widened. His finger trembled as he pointed at Long Chen. You ate a Tao Law? Why can't I? If you can, why don't you try? Long Chen glanced at him, then continued to grab Dao Laws. After grabbing a few more Dao Laws, Long Chen sat cross-legged and started to concentrate on refining the Dao Laws that he had just grabbed. Chapter 1388. This is impossible. What exactly is going on? Yu Mu was still talking to himself as if he was in a dream. Long Chen, who was beside him, found it funny. However, the most important thing now was to refine his Taoist rule as soon as possible. Long Chen calmed down and started to refine his Taoist rule. After talking to himself for a while, Yu Mu came back to his senses. He clenched his teeth and glanced at Long Chen, who had come back from the dead. Then, he sat down with his legs crossed and started to refine his Taoist rule again. However, this time, his speed was obviously much slower. It wasn't because he was exhausted but because his mind was in a mess. Damn it! Yu Mu roared in his heart. He formed a seal with both hands and thick Hong Meng power gushed out and instantly merged with the chaotic energy. Then, he grabbed 2 strands of Taoist rule and started to refine them at the same time. It seemed that the situation on Long Chen's side gave him a lot of pressure. On the other hand, everything on Long Chen's side was much simpler. Long Chen looked at the strands of Taoist rule swimming in his body. The chaotic energy in his body was refining the Taoist rule continuously. The only thing he had to pay attention to was not to let the Taoist rule slip out. In order to do so, transform into chaos and refine the Taoist rule. That was Long Chen's solution. After using the chaotic energy to block the Taoist rule, the compatibility between the Taoist rule and the chaotic energy gave him inspiration. In that dangerous situation, Long Chen instantly made the best choice. As expected, he destroyed his physical body and replaced it with the chaotic energy around him. In other words, Long Chen's current body wasn't his real physical body. His physical body had been destroyed and his current body was finished. It was completely formed by the chaotic energy. That was also why he could casually grab a few strands of Taoist rule and absorb them into his body. As long as it was a Taoist rule in his body was refining the Taoist rule at all times. As long as it didn't come into contact with his consciousness, the Taoist rule wouldn't affect his body. It wouldn't affect him at all. As for his physical body, when he became a sector lord, he would be able to truly control the chaotic energy and Taoist rule. In that case, he would be able to use the chaotic energy to reconstruct his physical body. Not only would he have a physical body again, but his physical body's strength would also increase by another level. However, all of this was something that Yu Mu had never thought of. If Yu Mu's speed of tempering the Tao Law had been slightly faster than Long Chen's, he could not catch up to Long Chen's speed now, even though he was tempering the Tao Law with both hands and had the assistance of the Hong Meng power. At this rate, with the help of the Sector Lord's inheritance, Long Chen wouldn't even need 10,000 years to touch the bottleneck of the Sector Lord realm. Damn it! Upon seeing Long Chen casually grab a few more wisps of Tao Law and begin to refine them, Yu Mu finally started to get anxious. He had only refined 2 wisps of Tao Law after exhausting himself to death. However, refining 2 wisps of Tao Laws at the same time was already his limit. If Long Chen refined 4 or more Tao Laws at the same time, he would only be courting death. Suddenly, the scene of Long Chen's body exploding and then being reconstructed appeared in his mind. Yu Mu was stunned for a moment, and then he looked at Long Chen thoughtfully. With his strength, of course, he could feel that Long Chen's body was made up of chaotic energy. Damn it! Exploding his body and using chaotic energy to reconstruct it? That's a way to survive. If he can't become a sector lord, he won't be able to leave this place for the rest of his life. Long Chen, you're really ruthless. Yu Mu started to hesitate. Currently, the only way he could catch up to Long Chen was to imitate him and explode his own body and use chaotic energy to reconstruct it. With the addition of Hong Meng's power, he would be able to suppress Long Chen once again. Moreover, Long Chen had no choice but to do it when he was on the verge of death. Yu Mu was in his peak condition, so he should be more confident. However, when he thought of the consequences of failure, Yu Mu shuddered. If there was any mistake, he would either be trapped here forever or be turned into ashes. It seemed that Long Chen wasn't a ruthless person anymore, he was simply a madman. However, Yu Mu was very clear that if this continued, Long Chen would definitely become a sector lord before him. At that time, Long Chen wouldn't give him the chance to become a sector lord. At that time, he would still be turned into ashes, or perhaps even worse. Fight it out. Yu Mu steeled his heart and spread his divine sense to every part of his body. He was prepared to disintegrate his physical body and reconstruct it with the power of chaos. However, at the moment when he was about to disintegrate, Yu Mu suddenly stopped. He opened his eyes in confusion and lowered his head to look at his hand that had a few cracks. On his hand, as he was about to disintegrate, the Hong Meng power in his body would naturally overflow. However, the Hong Meng power wasn't rejected by the space. Instead, it merged with the power of chaos and became a part of the power of chaos. Yu Mu's eyes lit up. The heavens are really helping me. He didn't hesitate any longer. Following a soft bang, Yu Mu's body completely disintegrated. However, after his body disintegrated, it didn't disappear completely like Long Chen. Instead, it still maintained its human form. Then, his flesh and blood began to disintegrate. Under the erosion of space, pieces of it disappeared. However, every time a part of it disappeared, it would immediately be filled with primordial energy, which then turned into chaotic energy. In less than 15 minutes, Yu Mu completed the transformation from his physical body to the power of chaos. There were no risks involved at all. Moreover, most importantly, as long as Yu Mu wanted to, he could completely transform the power of chaos in his body into the power of chaos and reconstruct his body. In other words, even if he failed, he could successfully escape from the space and wouldn't be restricted by it. So this is the body of the power of chaos. Taoist principles refine. Yu Mu opened his hands and restrained a few Taoist principles at the same time. He was refining almost 10 Taoist principles at the same time. The power of chaos transformed from the power of Hong Meng was more effective than Long Chen's power of chaos. What? Long Chen, who clearly sensed what Yu Mu was doing, was shocked. He didn't expect the power of Hong Meng to have such an ability. The feeling of ease had completely disappeared and Long Chen was nervous again. "Come on!" Long Chen shouted. Instantly, more Taoist principles entered his body. At the same time, Long Chen guarded his sea of consciousness with all his might. Then, he separated a bit of his consciousness to lock the power of chaos in his body. Every time a Taoist principle was refined, he would immediately absorb the power of chaos. Although it was dangerous to absorb a Taoist principle, it was the most efficient method. Chapter 1389. In the blink of an eye, another 4,000 years had passed. 4 years had passed in the outside world. At this moment, in Shanghai City, in a beautiful courtyard, a beautiful young woman in a plain white dress was looking at the fish swimming in the pond with infatuation. From time to time, she would let out a sigh that was like the sound of nature. Looking at it like this, it was as if she was admiring a beautiful painting of a fairy. It was the same. "Qing Xian? Are you thinking about him again?" When her name was called, Qing Xian stood up and nodded embarrassedly. "Young master has been gone for 5 years, and there's been no news from him." Don't worry." Yun Mei patted Qing Xian's shoulder with a smile. "Men don't die so easily. Believe in him. I have a feeling that he'll be back soon." "Is that so?" Qing Xian sighed and looked up at the star region that was dotted with stars. At the same time, in the Shuang Sea, Long Chen and Yu Mu still occupied one side each. The two of them had maintained this posture for a total of 4,000 years. The only difference was that after 4,000 years, the two of them had begun to emit multicolored light. At this moment, Long Chen suddenly stopped refining the Tao law in his body. He relaxed his mind, and the Tao law that had not been refined immediately rushed out of his body. Then, Long Chen slowly opened his eyes. Because of the power of chaos, he did not have eyes. Originally, he did not have eyes. However, Long Chen now had a pair of sharp eyes. If one looked carefully, they would be able to feel that this pair of eyes was formed by Tao law. It's been 5,000 years. It's time. Long Chen raised his head and looked at the sky. What should have been a dense fog actually dispersed when he looked at it, revealing the Milky Way. He originally thought that he would need to refine for 10,000 years to qualify for the position of Sector Lord. He did not expect that with the opportunity of transforming his body into chaos, the time needed to refine would be reduced by half. Moreover, this was after Long Chen had made thorough preparations. Under the circumstances, in order to become a world lord, one must first communicate with the ancient sacred divine world and obtain its recognition. Only then can one become the world lord. Long Chen recited the method to become a sector lord from the inheritance. It was hard to tell whether his expression was happy or sad. Are you going to start the challenge? In his mind, the sovereign lord's remnant soul asked in a low voice. It's time. The reason I used the Tao laws as my eyes was so that I could successfully see the location of the divine realm and obtain its approval. Now that my eyes have been formed, if I don't go now, when should I? Then let me lend you a hand. Long Chen was stunned. Wait, although I'm just a remnant soul and can't help you much, it's still better than nothing. If I can increase your chances of success, then so be it. But don't be so wishy-washy. You still have to rely on yourself in the future. You're not a fish in a pond. The ancient sacred divine world won't be able to restrict you. I hope that after you become the world lord, you'll be able to leave this world as soon as possible and fly to a wider sky. Because you're a hidden dragon in the abyss. Only a bigger stage can allow you to display your potential. Go. The sovereign lord's remnant soul's voice became softer and softer until it was almost inaudible. Long Chen was silent for a long time before he opened his mouth and said, I'll remember this. The sovereign lord's remnant soul laughed. As if he had used up his last bit of strength, he roared, Long Chen, connect to the divine realm. Become a sector lord. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of light shot out from between Long Chen's eyebrows and merged into his eyes. Immediately, the light in Long Chen's eyes became even brighter, and the surrounding fog completely dissipated. Not long after, a ray of light shot out from Long Chen's eyes and shot into the galaxy. It was like a stone being thrown into water. The ripples in the galaxy grew larger and larger, and the reaction became more and more intense. In the end, a ray of light shot out from the galaxy. Finally, the Milky Way shot down and directly shot into the space between Long Chen's eyebrows. Long Chen flew up. This time, he actually ignored the restrictions of the Tao laws on the Unreal Sea and flew directly to the surface of the Unreal Sea. After that, multicolored light shot out from Long Chen's body as if it resonated with the heavens and the earth. The Milky Way also shot out countless multicolored lights, as if it was guiding everyone to come here to worship. After a while, the heavens and the earth fell silent, and the multicolored lights were completely retracted. Long Chen's eyes were tightly shut. At this moment, he was in a state of chaos. Suddenly, an ethereal voice sounded in Long Chen's sea of consciousness. Who are you? I am Long Chen. Who are you? Long Chen. I am Long Chen, the Realm Lord, Long Chen. What is your Tao, my Tao? What is my Tao? Long Chen fell silent. The scene of his Tao heart shattering 5,000 years ago was still vivid in his mind. What is my Tao? Whose Tao am I walking on? Whose Tao should I walk on? Which Tao is the right one? Countless questions intertwined in his heart. If this had been in the past, Long Chen might have been lost for a long time. However, now, after experiencing the shattering and rebuilding of his Tao heart, he would never be lost about Tao. Long Chen took a deep breath and slowly said in his sea of consciousness, I walk on my own Tao. I am Long Chen. The Tao I walk on is Long Chen's Tao. I am the Tao. His sea of consciousness suddenly fell silent, as if that voice had never been there. Had he failed? Perhaps he should not have said Long Chen's Tao, which did not exist in the first place. No. Long Chen was not upset at all. No matter how many times he was asked, his answer would be the same. In this life, if a person did not live for himself, if he did not walk on his own Tao, then what was the difference between him and a walking corpse? I am the Tao. The Tao is me. Walking on other people's Tao would be picking up the wisdom of others. Only by walking on one's own Tao could one soar to the sky. After a long time, that illusory voice finally sounded again. Very good, Buzz. After that voice finished speaking, Long Chen's body suddenly emitted countless rays of light. Then, countless Tao laws began to gather on his body. Even the Tao laws of the illusory ocean below all flew up and dove straight into him like fish in water. They entered Long Chen's body. At the same time, the grayish-white body that Long Chen had created using the power of chaos began to show the color of flesh. The power of chaos was gradually compressed and then transformed into flesh and blood, forming his body. Every time a part was formed, countless Tao laws would flow into it. At this moment, Long Chen could truly achieve the state of law with his words. Every action of his was a law. Chapter 1390. Ha ha! Long Chen's unbridled laughter reverberated throughout the illusory sea. The surrounding galaxies also started to ripple as if they were celebrating the birth of their new master. Is this the feeling of grasping the Tao Law? Long Chen looked at his right hand excitedly. When he was refining the Tao Law, he could only feel the effect of this Tao Law, but he couldn't truly use it. He only knew how it worked, but not why it worked. However, he was now completely different. He, who had obtained the recognition of the ancient sacred divine world's Tao Law, could use the Tao Law as he wished. Long Chen extended his hand, and a transparent white ball of light started to gather in his hand. Following that, the ball of light's transparency became lower and lower. In the end, it even turned into a solid ball. This wasn't an ordinary ball. It was formed from the Tao Law. Long Chen had painstakingly gathered the Tao Law that was the size of his eyes for 5,000 years. At this moment, he was able to gather so many Tao Laws in an instant. After becoming the master of a realm, his strength was completely different from before. Long Chen's gaze gradually sharpened. He turned to face Yumu, who was still refining the Tao Law, and said in a sinister tone, "Then, the next step is to get rid of this calamity." With that, Long Chen shot the ball of light in his hand towards Yumu. What he had gathered just now was the spatial Tao Law. As long as this ball of light touched Yumu, it would explode and clear the surrounding space. And Yumu would follow suit. All the space would disappear together. In the blink of an eye, the Tao Law ball had already flown in front of Yumu. However, Yumu was still in a state of indifference. It was as if he had already sealed off all his senses to the outside world. In the end, I am the victor of this battle. Long Chen turned around confidently. As the master of a realm, he could completely control the surrounding space. He had already sealed off all of Yumu's escape routes as long as Yumu was still a titled Darch. Even if he had the support of the Hong Meng power, it might be difficult to say in the outside world, but in the ancient sacred divine world, Long Chen could suppress him with one hand. But the expected explosion did not occur. Long Chen instantly turned around, only to discover that Yumu had already woken up. Furthermore, he was holding the law magic ball in one hand as if he was really holding a very ordinary ball. How could this be? Long Chen's pupils constricted. It was precisely because he had become a realm lord that he understood the power of Tao laws. Even though this Tao law orb seemed unremarkable, it was already considered one of the most powerful moves Long Chen could use in this realm. I want this, to be able to resist the Tao law so easily, unless… You guessed correctly. As though he had seen through Long Chen's thoughts, Yu Mu sneered. I didn't expect that you would actually become a sector lord before me. Looks like that sector lord inheritance of yours isn't completely useless. However, you want to kill me with just Tao laws? Am I not indulging in the wildest fantasies? Towards the end, Yu Mu's tone suddenly became stern. The moment he finished speaking, a majestic aura burst forth from his body. This aura was definitely not something a titled Emperor Lord could possess. Furthermore, the feeling he gave Long Chen was the same as 5,000 years ago. It was on a completely different level. In other words, Yu Mu had also become a sector lord now. In a short period of time, 2 sector lords were born at the same time. Why? How could you become a sector lord in such a short period of time? Long Chen looked at Yu Mu in shock. When he became a sector lord, he still had to communicate with the ancient sacred divine world, causing a huge commotion. As for Yu Mu, compared to him, it was simply silent. Long Chen did not even sense the change in his aura. Yu Mu snorted coldly, his tone filled with disdain. Humph! How can a frog at the bottom of a well like you pry into Hong Meng's power? Hong Meng's power! It was Hong Meng's power again. Long Chen gritted his teeth. From the beginning, Yu Mu's Hong Meng's power had always suppressed him. In terms of battle, Long Chen was confident that he would not lose to anyone. However, it was this Hong Meng's power that caused Long Chen to lose in terms of power source. Actually, the reason why Yu Mu could break through to sector lords so peacefully was all because of Long Chen, who broke through first. To break through to sector lord, one had to first communicate with this world with their consciousness and obtain the recognition of the Tao law. Doing so was not wrong. Long Chen also used this method to become a sector lord. However, when Yu Mu broke through, Long Chen had already obtained the recognition of the Tao law. Logically speaking, before Long Chen died, the Tao law would not recognize a second person. In other words, although there were 2 sector lords at the same time. Although Yu Mu became a sector lord, to him it was just cultivation. However, he had never communicated with the Tao law. He was completely unable to grasp the Tao law of this world. Although he easily grabbed the Tao law orb just now, that was completely relying on his Hong Meng's power to forcefully grab it and not control it. Therefore, the 2 of them had actually misunderstood. Long Chen thought that Yu Mu could also grasp the Tao law of this world. As for Yu Mu, he also thought that Long Chen's breakthrough process was the same as his. However, in reality, there was a fatal difference between the 2. Now that you've already become a sector lord, it seems like you have no intention of leaving. Am I right? Long Chen said solemnly. What did you say? You want me to leave this world? Ha 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 ha. Yu Mu laughed out loud as if he had seen the funniest show in the world. Long Chen laughed coldly. Looks like you've really completely merged with Hong Meng. Ha ha ha. Long Chen, oh Long Chen, should I say that you're too naive or too good at pretending? In these 5,000 years, our goals have long been clear to each other. Yu Mu's face was filled with anger as he roared at Long Chen. I'm not afraid to tell you that I've already sworn that when I, Yu Mu, become a sector lord, it'll be the day of this world's destruction. As for you, you'll be on the same list. You! As expected. Long Chen's pupils constricted and his gaze became extremely solemn. He had long known that Yu Mu's motive for becoming a sector lord was definitely not just to leave this world. However, He did not expect that his motive was to destroy this world. How many lives would be destroyed if he destroyed a world? What kind of deep hatred did Yu Mu have with this world? Most importantly, this was Long Chen's home. His clansmen and loved ones were all in this world. Of course, Long Chen would not let him succeed. A battle was unavoidable. Ah, Long Chen, when I was a titled monarch lord, I was still somewhat fearful of you. That was because I still wasn't proficient in using Hong Meng's power. However, now that we're both sector lords, I'll let you experience the true power of Hong Meng's power. Chapter 1391. Yu Mu, I'll give you one last chance. If you leave this world now, I'll pretend I didn't hear what you said just now. Also, I'll help you leave this world. How about that? Long Chen said to Yu Mu in a low voice. If possible, Long Chen definitely wouldn't want to fight with Yu Mu. It wasn't because he was afraid of death. It was because the realm of a sector lord was too high. If they really fought, it would affect other living beings. Long Chen didn't have full confidence in killing Yu Mu. If Yu Mu insisted on escaping after being defeated, Long Chen probably couldn't do anything to him. At that time, there would be a sector lord hiding in the dark as his mortal enemy. With Long Chen's power, he could protect his own people, but he couldn't protect the entire world. Therefore, as the lord of a sector, he had to consider the lives of the entire world. Give me a chance? Yu Mu looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. I say, Long Chen, could it be that you've become an idiot after cultivating for so long? Do I need you to give me a chance? What a joke. Enough. There's no point in saying more. Today, either you die or I die. After you die, let the entire ancient sacred divine world be buried with you. I won't let you down for bringing me to the illusory ocean. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Mu's body emitted boundless Hong Meng power, instantly enveloping half of the space. The atmosphere became tense in an instant. Long Chen's gaze turned serious, and his tone became very eerie. Since you insist, I'll kill you today. Yu Mu's fingers moved continuously, forming 3 Hong Meng techniques at once. Before this, he could only form one technique at a time. He didn't expect that after becoming a sector lord, Yu Mu's use of Hong Meng power would reach such a terrifying level. Divine Beast Battle Soul. Long Chen roared, and the power of 9 Divine Beast Battle Souls came out from the Dragon Palace, surrounding Long Chen with an unparalleled aura. Every Divine Beast Battle Soul was roaring at the sky, as if they couldn't wait to tear Yu Mu apart. Yu Mu snorted, and Hong Meng power began to gather in his hands. In an instant, Hong Meng power gathered in his hands, forming the shadow of a sword. I'll let you see the true Hong Meng technique. Emperor Crushing Technique. When Long Chen saw that Yu Mu used a killing move right off the bat, his pupils constricted, and he spread his arms. My words are law. The laws of the world are mine to use. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, the space between the two of them suddenly became extremely distorted. After that, it completely shattered like a broken mirror. Long Chen's simple wave of his hand had actually shattered the space. Child's play. Yu Mu snorted and his body flickered. He passed through the shattered space in a few blinks of an eye and continued to shoot toward Long Chen. However, Long Chen didn't expect these Dao laws to be able to block Yu Mu's attack. He was just trying to buy himself time to release his technique. Long Chen grabbed the void with his right hand, and a golden halberd engraved with intricate patterns appeared in his hand. Then, when the halberd appeared, the Divine Beast Battle Souls behind him roared excitedly, and all of them entered the halberd. Suddenly, the aura on the halberd soared at a terrifying speed. The 9 Divine Beast Battle Souls each had their own divine abilities and techniques, and they didn't belong to this world. Their power increased crazily in an instant. Not enough. Space Dao Law, condense for me. Long Chen roared. Then, strands of space Tao Law visible to the naked eye gathered at the tip of the halberd. The golden tip of the halberd was gradually replaced by a grayish-white color. Tao Law had replaced the tip of the halberd. If one was stabbed by such a halberd, even if they didn't die on the spot, they would be torn to shreds by the space Tao Law on it. Break. In the blink of an eye, after the space Tao Law had been condensed, Yu Mu had already arrived. In an instant, the shadow of the golden sword and Long Chen's Tao Law halberd collided violently. Boom! An explosion that was enough to make a high-level divine emperor's ears rang out when the two collided. Hong Meng's power and space Tao Law began to wreak havoc with the two of them as the center. Wherever Hong Meng's power went, everything was destroyed, and wherever the space Tao Law went, the space was shattered. At the same time, because of the collision between the two of them, a huge wave was set off in the illusory sea below. This time, all the seawater in the illusory sea was lifted up, and the ground below was directly exposed. The chaos Tao Law above the illusory sea was shattered, and then it escaped into the space. It had returned to normal. This was just the first collision between the two realm lords, and it had caused such a terrifying result. The two of them returned to their original positions under the force of the collision. Neither of them said anything, and they raised the weapons in their hands and continued to charge at each other. They both knew that at this point there was no need for any more words. There was only fighting. Only when one of them died would this matter be settled. Long Chen couldn't lose. As the Realm Lord, he had the responsibility to protect the ancient saint heavenly world. In fact, Yu Mu wouldn't run. His ultimate goal was to destroy the ancient saint heavenly world. With the Realm Lord Long Chen, who was recognized by the ancient saint heavenly world, there was no way he could destroy this world. Therefore, to destroy this world, he had to kill Long Chen first. With such a goal, it was destined that today would be a fight to the death. In less than 10 minutes, the two of them had already exchanged more than 10,000 blows. After more than 100 blows, the two of them were finally injured. Huff! Huff! Long Chen took a few deep breaths. That Hong Meng's attack had landed squarely on his body. If Yu Mu was still a titled emperor, this attack wouldn't have hurt him at all. However, with the might of a realm lord, even Long Chen couldn't take it. Yu Mu wasn't in a good state either. There was already a huge hole in his body. When the attack landed on Long Chen also used his own halberd to pierce through him. In addition to the support of the space Tao Law, if Yu Mu hadn't used the power of Hong Meng to disperse the Tao Law in time, his body would have been completely torn apart. Long Chen raised his hand expressionlessly. In an instant, the power of Tao Law gathered again. The difference was that this time, he gathered the time Tao Law. After more than 100 blows, he realized that the space Tao Law couldn't do anything to Yu Mu, who had the power of Hong Meng. Since that was the case, the time Tao Law might be useful. On the other side, Yu Mu clenched his fists in the air. A purple halberd formed by the power of Hong Meng appeared in his hands. Yu Mu brandished the halberd a few times and then stared intently at Long Chen. Chapter 1392. Star Devouring. Long Chen roared and pointed his halberd at Yu Mu. In the next instant, the 9 divine beast battle souls merged with the halberd all shot out, bringing along billions of stars as they charged towards Yu Mu. Heaven's Inquisition. Yu Mu raised the halberd in his hand and pointed it at Long Chen. A powerful Hong Meng force shot out from the halberd and collided with the divine beast battle souls and billions of stars in the blink of an eye. Boom! The explosion sounded again. Neither of them were surprised and didn't stop. When the first wave of attacks was released, both of them had already moved. They waved their halberds and charged at each other. Ding! The sound of metal colliding rang out continuously. At their level, any dazzling moves were useless. Only the simplest attacks were the most effective. However, although their attacks were simple, if someone who wasn't a realm lord was here, they would probably be turned into ashes in an instant. The best evidence was the ground full of scars beneath their feet. That's right, it was the ground. The unreal ocean, which was originally the most mysterious place in the chaos, had completely dried up under their continuous collision. Not even a drop of water was left. Furthermore, the Tao laws here were becoming more and more chaotic. Not only the time Tao law and space Tao law, but the other Tao laws were also becoming chaotic. From time to time, lava would spurt out from the ground. Perhaps, not far from where the lava spurted out, there would be huge water pillars spurting out. Ding! Their halberds collided once again, and a wave of energy that contained the primordial energy and the power of Tao laws shot out. Then, it heavily smashed into the ground, and instantly, another large crater appeared on the ground. Every time the two of them collided, they would leave behind terrifying scars in the surrounding space. As the two of them fought, the surrounding space was close to collapsing. However, neither of them cared about this. In their eyes, there was only each other. After another collision, both of them returned to their original positions at the same time. After another 100 rounds of fighting, both of them were still equally matched. Hong Meng techniques are only SOSO. Long Chen grinned. Although he hadn't won, he didn't want to lose to his opponent in terms of aura. The power of the Tao laws is only SOSO. Yu Mu replied bluntly. Although he had an expression as if nothing had happened, only he himself knew what was really going on. Even the time Tao law was useless? Long Chen said in his mind. He had used the time Tao law in this exchange. However, this didn't bring him too many surprises. The time Tao law couldn't cause Yu Mu much trouble either. However, in the process of exchanging blows, there was something that made him feel more and more strange. That was because Yu Mu had never used Tao laws to attack him. He had originally thought that Yu Mu only used the power of Hong Meng because he did not know how to use the Tao law. However, if he had to use Hong Meng's power to even block Long Chen's attack, it would be too much of a waste. This was because if Yu Mu could control the laws, as long as he used them properly, he could even reverse the power of the laws and use it to attack Long Chen. Even if he couldn't do that, he should be able to easily dispel his Tao law attack. However, now, Yu Mu actually had to spend so much effort to directly resist the Tao law attack. Because of this, Yu Mu's consumption was far greater than Long Chen's. After all, Long Chen was only mobilizing the heaven and earth Tao law, while Yu Mu was truly consuming the power of Hong Meng in his body. Could it be that he didn't know how to use the Tao law? Long Chen guessed. If Yu Mu really didn't know how to use the Tao law, then becoming a sector lord would only increase his cultivation by a little. However, Long Chen quickly rejected this conjecture. Yu Mu was the inheritor of Hong Meng. If he didn't even know how to use the Tao law, then he wouldn't be worthy of being Long Chen's opponent. Moreover, before becoming a sector lord, Long Chen knew nothing about the use of the Tao law. Long Chen had also comprehended the use of the Tao law after becoming a sector lord. He didn't believe that Yu Mu didn't know how to use the Tao law at all. No, it wasn't that he didn't know how to use it, but that he couldn't. A bold conjecture appeared in Long Chen's mind. His eyes instantly lit up. If he couldn't use the Tao law, the more Long Chen thought about it, the more likely it was. Suddenly, he recalled what was said in the sector lord's inheritance. To become a sector lord, one had to be recognized by the sector and master the Tao law of the sector. As for him, he had become a sector lord before Yu Mu. He had already mastered the Tao law and obtained the recognition of the sector. In that case, before he died, how could the ancient sacred divine world recognize a second person? This was also why there had always been only one sector lord in the past. Long Chen's smile gradually brightened. He looked at Yu Mu, who was nervously watching him, and felt that he had found a way to defeat Yu Mu. At the same time, in the first starfield, the moment Long Chen became a sector lord, this place started to become chaotic. Golden Lion Emperor, do you feel it? That aura. Tong Tian looked into the distance in bewilderment. His eyes were filled with disbelief, but more than that, he was excited. Golden Lion Emperor laughed loudly. Then, he punched his fists together. How can I not feel it? This aura can only be the aura of a sector lord. Moreover, it's the lord's junior martial uncle. The lord has succeeded. He has finally become a sector lord. Tong Tian was so excited that he was incoherent. As someone who had always been by Long Chen's side, the latter was the person he admired the most in his life. Long Chen's indomitable aura, unflinching attitude, and unparalleled strength had long made him prostrate himself in admiration. Now that he received the news that Long Chen had broken through to become a sector lord, Tong Tian was the happiest person besides Long Chen himself. Lord Tong Tian. Lord Golden Lion Emperor. At this moment, there was a commotion at the entrance of the hall. Not long after, hundreds of flowing lights flew in and gathered in front of the two. Lord, we. All right. Everyone, please be quiet. Tong Tian gestured with his hands for everyone to be quiet. As he gestured, the noise gradually decreased. Everyone looked at Tong Tian with hopeful eyes, waiting to hear the final judgment from his mouth. Tong Tian took a deep breath and slowly said, That aura, there's no mistake. It's junior martial uncle, our lord, Long Chen. After a short moment of silence, the various patriarchs knelt down in the direction of the aura. Congratulations, Lord. Haha. It's too early to congratulate him. Golden Lion Emperor laughed. Chapter 1393. Meanwhile, above the unreal ocean. Although it was called the unreal ocean, it was no longer considered an ocean. Not only had the seawater disappeared, but the ground had also collapsed. Not only that, but the surrounding space had also shattered. The battle that was taking place showed no signs of stopping. Dao Law Suppression. Long Chen waved his hand and invisible Dao Laws began to gather around Yumu. The Space Dao Law kept compressing the space around him. The Time Dao Law accelerated the flow of his body by a few thousand times. The Fire Dao Law and other elemental Dao Laws were constantly attacking him. The Fire Dao Laws kept attacking Yumu. Hong Meng's Guardian. Hong Meng's Heart. Yumu's figure flashed as he tried his best to avoid the more lethal Dao Laws. Then, he activated the Hong Meng's Guardian Force and layers of Hong Meng's Guardian Force began to form around him. Naive. Long Chen laughed arrogantly. The Dao Laws that Yumu had dodged gathered again and charged towards Yumu. Finally, they crashed into Yumu's barrier. The moment the Dao Laws crashed into Yumu's barrier shattered and the Dao Laws turned into nothingness before disappearing into the void. Ha! Yumu pressed his chest as his figure flashed. In the blink of an eye, he distanced himself from Long Chen. He stared at Long Chen as though he was afraid of Long Chen's Dao Law attack. As expected, Long Chen's lips curled up. He had guessed correctly. Yumu could not control the ancient Saint Divine World's Dao Laws. The only one who could control Dao Laws was him, Long Chen. If that was the case, even if Yumu was a sector lord, Long Chen could kill Yumu in this world without having to lift a finger. After all, to Long Chen, using the Dao Laws of this world was just a matter of using his consciousness. However, to Yumu, defending these Dao Laws would consume a lot of Hong Meng's Guardian Force. Although as a sector lord, the recovery speed of Hong Meng's power was very fast. No matter how fast you were, could you be faster than Long Chen, who didn't consume any energy at all? At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the Rain Tomb ran out of Hong Meng's energy. That would be the time of his death. Long Chen's eyes flashed. These thoughts flashed through his mind in the blink of an eye. He licked his lips and clenched his fist. The Dao Law transformed into countless grayish-white long swords and charged toward Yumu. Then, Long Chen's hands did not stop moving. With a wave of his left hand, countless spears shot toward Yumu. Right now, he wouldn't give Yu Mu any time to catch his breath. He had to exhaust Yu Mu's stamina at all times. Yu Mu gritted his teeth when he saw that the Dao Law longswords were about to reach him. He unleashed the power of Hong Meng, instantly destroying a large number of Dao Law longswords. However, in the next second, the spears formed by the Dao Law longswords were in front of him again. Yu Mu had no choice but to activate the protection of the power of Hong Meng again and meet the Dao Law longswords head-on. After a crisp clink, the Dao Law longswords also escaped into nothingness. At the same time, Yu Mu's power of Hong Meng seemed to shatter. Long Chen, do you only know how to release these Dao Law attacks behind you? Do you dare fight me head-on? Yu Mu roared and charged toward Long Chen with his halberd. However, would Long Chen still meet him head-on? Of course not. To Long Chen, why would he take the risk of fighting Yu Mu head-on if he didn't use such a convenient and safe method to kill Yu Mu? Although this method went against Long Chen's usual style, in front of such a strong enemy, especially when he couldn't bear the consequences of failure, even the most despicable method wouldn't be so despicable anymore. Therefore, Long Chen raised his hand to gather the Space Dao Law and pulled away from Yu Mu in the blink of an eye. No matter how Yu Mu moved forward, he couldn't get in front of Long Chen. On the other hand, Long Chen could still control the Dao Law to attack Yu Mu while dodging. You, Long Chen, do you dare fight me head-on? Yu Mu was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't hit Long Chen and was even beaten up by Long Chen like an arrow. Was there anything more humiliating than this? Long Chen snorted and said disdainfully, "Are you a 3-year-old child? Who told you that you have to fight head-on? If you have the ability, why don't you come to me?" Yu Mu's face was completely red, and his long purple hair fluttered without any wind. Ever since he received the inheritance of Hong Meng, this was the first time he felt so humiliated in a battle. Even though Long Chen almost injured him when they were testing each other, it was only a small margin. Moreover, he wasn't serious at all. However, from the looks of it, if this continued, he would be exhausted to death by Long Chen sooner or later. You want to exhaust me to death? Long Chen, let me tell you that the absolute difference in power isn't something you can make up for with these little tricks of yours. Hong Meng purple body condense. After finally knowing Long Chen's goal, Yu Mu's Hong Meng power flourished. His body gradually became transparent, and if one were to sense it now, they would discover that his entire body had turned into the power of Hong Meng. Yu Mu held his halberd and charged toward Long Chen with a force that could destroy mountains and fill seas. Wherever he went, space would shatter. The space that could only be shattered with the power of Dao Law was shattered by the momentum of this attack. Haha, since there's no way to make up for it, why are you in such a hurry? Long Chen laughed and replied. Although he looked very relaxed on the surface, Long Chen's eyes were filled with seriousness at this moment. This was because his method of using the Space Dao Law to increase the distance between them was already useless. In Yu Mu's attack, space was shattered everywhere it went. Naturally, he couldn't use the Space Dao Law in the shattered space. In addition, this was Yu Mu's attack that contained hatred. Whether it was in terms of power or speed, it surpassed the original attack. Compared to this attack, the original battle between the two of them was like a child's play. Was this the true power of Hong Meng's technique? Before the halberd arrived, Long Chen felt his face being scratched by the wind from the halberd. This attack could actually hurt Long Chen with just the momentum of this attack. Since he couldn't dodge, then he wouldn't. Long Chen raised his halberd with one hand and stepped on the void with one foot. He actually charged toward Yu Mu's direction. Divine Beast Roar. Dao Law Unification. Roar. As Long Chen's voice fell, the halberd in his hand split from 1 halberd point to 10 halberd points. 9 of the halberd points were transformed from a divine beast battle soul. The divine beast amplification from the day of the competition appeared once again. At the same time, the grayish-white Dao Law began to condense on Long Chen's body and finally flowed into Long Chen's hand that held the halberd. His hand also turned grayish-white at that moment. Chapter 1394. After the explosion, the two figures flashed at the same time and appeared in a galaxy not far away. It wasn't that they didn't want to stay there, but the space there had been completely shattered. It would take some time for it to recover. However, the battle wouldn't end just like that. Again, heaven-crushing technique. Yumu didn't even have time to catch his breath. The collision just now didn't seem to have any effect on him. He flipped his body and formed a sword with one hand. A golden longsword shot towards Long Chen. At this moment, he knew that it wasn't easy for him to use the Hong Meng technique to close the distance between him and Long Chen. If Long Chen widened the distance again, he would still be killed by Long Chen's power of Dao unless he used that technique again. He would be exhausted to death. However, how could Long Chen not know Yumu's goal? Long Chen clenched his fist and punched Yumu heavily. However, the strange thing was that this punch didn't show much offensive power. It looked more like a defensive technique. Oh no! Yumu was shocked. He wants to use the momentum of this technique to widen the distance. Yumu instantly saw through Long Chen's plan. Long Chen concentrated his power on defense. He obviously wanted to use Yumu's attack to send him away, then continue to exhaust him with Dao power. After a short moment of shock, Yumu immediately calmed down. He thought about it and came up with a countermeasure. Since you want to defend, I might as well send you further away. Yumu thought viciously. Then, there was a buzzing sound in his body. He actually activated all the Hong Meng power in his body. In an instant, Yumu's body shone brightly. The power of this attack instantly soared, and even faintly showed signs of overshadowing the previous attack. Although it was quite a burden for Yumu to continuously attack like this, how could Yumu just watch such a rare opportunity slip away? As long as this attack landed, Yumu was confident that even if Long Chen didn't die, he would at least be half crippled. Long Chen. I've said it before, the absolute gap in strength is not something your little tricks can make up for. Since you want to use my strength to pull away, then I'll block all the power of Hong Meng. This time, you'll die here. Yumu thought viciously. Then, he continued to squeeze out the Hong Meng power in his body and poured it all into the golden sword. For a moment, the golden sword patterns formed by Hong Meng's power became clearer and clearer. It even gave people a feeling that it was corporeal. It was as if the Rain Tomb had really taken it out. Just like picking up a sword and chopping down Long Chen. Not good. He had been seen through. At this moment, Long Chen was also shocked. He had sensed Yumu's increase in power immediately. However, it was already impossible for him to do anything about it. The only thing he could do now was to layer some spatial Dao laws between the two of them and weaken them as much as possible. After weakening the power of the Rain Tomb, they collided again. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen's fist collided with Yumu's golden sword. Boom! Poof! Long Chen flew out like a kite with a broken string. On the other hand, Yumu did a backflip and floated steadily in the Milky Way. After barely stabilizing himself, Long Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He had indeed been careless just now. He did not expect Yumu to be able to sense the power in his fist instantly and make the most accurate judgment so quickly. Take another move of mine. Without giving Long Chen too much time to think, Yumu raised his halberd and attacked again. Long Chen hurriedly raised his halberd to meet the attack. The two of them fought again because their speed was already too fast. In the entire Milky Way, there was only the sound of metal clashing. The sound and the flickering power from time to time made the two of them completely invisible. Gradually, Long Chen could not hold on any longer. On the other hand, Yumu, who had clearly exhausted almost all of his Hong Meng power, seemed to be getting braver and braver as he fought. He kept suppressing Long Chen. No, if this goes on, I'll be the first to die. Long Chen stabbed at Yu Mu with his halberd and then waved his hand to gather the Space Dao Law to cover himself. However, it was quickly shattered by Yu Mu. Long Chen did not even have the time to gather the Dao Law as Yu Mu stuck to him. Ha 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 ha. What's wrong? What's wrong? Don't you have the Dao Law? Come on. Show it to me. Yu Mu laughed wantonly. The Hong Meng power poured crazily at Long Chen as if it was free. Without the help of the Dao Laws, Long Chen's strength was no match for the primordial energy, let alone the madness of the Rain Tomb, which was close to madness. Under the attack, Long Chen was defeated. Divine Beast Roar. Long Chen roared. The divine beasts in the halberd also roared. Then, they all turned into halberds and shot toward Yu Mu. Back off. Yu Mu did not even look at them. He raised his halberd and waved it. The 9 halberds immediately returned to their original forms and returned to Long Chen's body. What? How is this possible? Long Chen's eyes widened. That was the attack he was most confident in. However, he did not expect Yu Mu to dissolve it so easily. One had to know that this attack had caused Yu Mu a lot of trouble before. Is this the power of the Hongmeng body? Long Chen thought of a countermeasure as he resisted Yu Mu's attack with difficulty. He did not have the time to perform a large-scale Dao Law attack. He was not Yu Mu's opponent at all. In addition, he had made a mistake in the previous exchange. Long Chen's injuries were definitely going to be worse. Compared to Yu Mu, his injuries were even worse. No. I have to think of a way to distance myself. Long Chen shouted in his heart. The halberd in his hand did not stop. He dissolved Yu Mu's attack again and again. However, under Yu Mu's increasingly ferocious attacks, Long Chen finally revealed a flaw. In a battle between the two, any small flaw was enough to be fatal. Haha, Long Chen, die. Yu Mu keenly grasped Long Chen's flaw. In the blink of an eye, Yu Mu flashed in front of Long Chen and stabbed with his halberd. At the same time, the power of the Hong Meng formed a boundary and sealed off all of Long Chen's escape routes. Right now, Long Chen couldn't retreat, and it was too late to block. He could only die now. Don't hurt my master. Just as Long Chen was about to lose all hope, a familiar angry voice was heard. Then, a ray of light shot onto the boundary in the blink of an eye, causing a small opening to appear in Yu Mu's sealed escape route. Long Chen seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He retreated from the small opening in an instant. Then, his figure flashed and he appeared at the source of the voice in the blink of an eye. You, Tongtian? How did you get here? Tongtian did not say anything. He knelt on the ground with a plop and said in a low voice, Master, we came late to protect you. Please forgive us, Master. Chapter 1395. As Tongtian and the Golden Lion Emperor arrived, numerous God Emperors appeared behind them. Every single one of them was a member of the primal chaos divine race. Even the weakest among them was an 8th-order God Emperor. Long Chen didn't recognize most of them, but they all knew who he was. The Golden Lion Emperor and Tongtian bowed, and the countless primal chaos divine race experts behind them did the same. When Long Chen saw this scene, he couldn't help but stare blankly. He could clearly see the primal chaos divine race experts who had wanted to kill him. At this moment, they had actually followed the Golden Lion Emperor and the others. More accurately, the number of God Emperors in front of him represented the peak strength of the entire primal chaos divine race. Long Chen and Yu Mu stepped into the world overlord realm one after another. Their might instantly spread throughout the entire primal chaos divine race. No matter where they were, the 9th-order God Emperors of the various races could feel the suppressive power of the two. This kind of suppressive power was linked to the inextinguishable Dao Law, and it had the power to freeze the heavens and shake the earth. When the Golden Lion Emperor, Tong Tian, and the others from the World Overlord Alliance arrived, they attracted the attention of the Primal Chaos Divine Race expert. They could feel the difference between the two forces. Even though Yu Mu was a world overlord, he only wanted to destroy the ancient sacred divine world. Any Ninth Order God Emperor could sense this kind of killing intent through the inextinguishable Tao Law. Now that Long Chun had become a world overlord, the various Primal Chaos Divine Race experts had already thrown their grudges to the back of their minds. What they needed to do now was to bury the hatchet and expel Yu Mu. The ancient sacred divine world was their foundation. They had once been enemies with Long Chun, and they had even wanted to destroy the World Overlord Alliance. All of that was for the faint hope of stepping into the World Overlord realm. Now that Long Chun had become a world overlord, their unrealistic hopes had been set in stone. Swish, swish. Some of them were unwilling to let go of their grudges against Long Chun, but they still stared at Yu Mu with a look of death. Even though the various Primal Chaos Divine Race experts had come to reinforce Long Chun, they were also fighting for their own race. If Yu Mu did not die and Long Chun did not win, the ancient sacred heavenly world would cease to exist. When Long Chun saw the sky full of brilliance and countless murderous gazes landing on Yu Mu, he immediately took a deep breath and looked coldly at Yu Mu. I have given you a chance. Since you are unwilling to leave, then be buried in the ancient sacred divine world forever. Yu Mu sneered when he heard Huang Xiaolong's words. He looked around and said, Do you think these Ninth Order God Emperors can participate in a battle between world overlords? If you want to kill them, it will be as easy as blowing off dust. Buzz. As soon as Yu Mu finished speaking, the Hong Meng power around him poured out like a tidal wave, instantly covering the entire heaven and earth as it fell upon all the chaos gods. Rumble. Long Chen's halberd pierced through the sky and turned into a 1,000,000 miles long halberd, blocking all the deity emperors behind it. Hong Meng's power was pushed to the extreme. Pour all of your power into the Tao Law and lend it to me. Long Chen's voice rang in everyone's ears. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, he grabbed at the air with both hands. Purple light filled the sky and auspicious signs surged like a tide. As far as the eyes could see, in the endless void, the Tao Law in the sky appeared like endless threads that pierced through heaven and earth. The Tao Law of lightning, the Tao Law of rain, the Tao Law of wind, the endless Tao Law of undying Tao Law fell into his hands in an instant. 3 inches of land in his palm could cause chaos in an entire world. When the various chaos gods saw this, how could they dare to hesitate? Their backs were already drenched in cold sweat. They could clearly feel it. Whether it was Yu Mu or Long Chen, their current strength was comparable to the original ancient sacred world overlord. This was something they had never expected. Otherwise, they would not have dared to come here. They had miscalculated one thing. Regardless of whether it was Long Chen or Yu Mu, both of them possessed a power that did not belong to this world, the Hong Meng Force. Endless energy surged into the Tao Law of the Chaos Gods. One after another, the Ninth Order God Emperor's cultivation fell rapidly. 8th Order God Emperor. 7th Order God Emperor. They used the Tao Law they had comprehended to feed back all of their energy. Through the Tao Law, Long Chen absorbed all of their energy. You actually used the undying Tao Law to devour all of their cultivation and forcefully increased the limit of the Hong Meng force in your body. When Yu Mu saw this, the expression on his face changed. He actually sped out of the ancient sacred divine world without looking back. His speed was so fast that it was shocking. Long Chen had entered the world overlord's position and was recognized by the undying Tao Law. Even though the two of them had the same cultivation, the difference between their Tao Laws was like heaven and earth. The Hong Meng force was the foundation that determined their combat strength. At that moment, the power of countless primal chaos divine tribe members flowed like a river into the sea. The pinnacle power of a world was infused into Long Chen's body. This force was enough to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Yumu had never thought that Long Chen would be able to reach this step with the undying Tao Law. He, who had made a solemn vow a moment ago, had completely lost his will to fight. Long Chen held the undying Tao Law in his hands. When he moved, the entire ancient sacred divine world trembled. His body was completely enveloped by the Hongmeng force. It was as if his body would explode at any moment. Today you won't be able to leave. Rumble. Long Chen took a step forward. The boundless starry sky turned into dust. Thousands of stars and the illusory sea disappeared completely. He had actually reached the cliff of the divine world with a single step. Yumu stopped in his tracks. He looked at Long Chen with fear in his eyes. His face was ashen. "You're crazy." He could feel it. Long Chen's Hongmeng force had reached the limit of the world overlord realm. He had to endure. If Long Chen lasted even a second longer, his body would explode and he would be annihilated by the Hongmeng force. Whoosh. Unfortunately, Long Chen didn't seem to want to give him the chance to do so. The halberd that had transformed into 1,000,000 miles to protect the primal chaos god race appeared out of thin air and pierced through Yumu's body. The power of the 9 divine beast battle souls wreaked havoc. The light of the Hongmeng force rumbled like thunder and cracked. Yumu's Hongmeng force was greatly shaken. He didn't even try to retrieve his halberd. Instead, he turned back and fled. His heart felt as if it had been stuffed into an ice cave. The halberd had explained everything. Long Chen's current power was enough to kill him. "No, I can't die. I had the fortune to obtain the inheritance of the Hongmeng beings and become a world overlord. I even know the secrets of this world. How can I die here?" He roared crazily. However, Long Chen followed him like a ghost. The terrifying Hongmeng force was so dense that it was incomprehensible. The boundless Tao laws in the sky started to turn purple. Whoosh! The undying Tao laws disappeared and reappeared one after another. In the end, they pierced through Yumu's body like thousands of threads and completely shattered his body. Chapter 1396. Yumu's divine soul stopped fleeing under the gazes of countless pairs of eyes. Everyone knew that everything in the ancient saint divine world would return to normal. The successor of the ancient saint divine world would take over the position of the divine world master. That person was Long Chen. Long Chen stared at Yumu and saw the endless unwillingness in his eyes. Rumble. He did not stop. The endless Hongmeng power transformed into the simplest form of energy and bombarded Yumu's divine soul. His divine soul, which was originally glowing with purple light, started to weaken at a speed visible to the naked eye. More and more purple light was blasted out of his body by Long Chen and then hidden between heaven and earth. When Long Chen released the excess Hongmeng power in his body, he also blasted out the Hongmeng power in Yumu's body. The weakening of Yumu's divine soul made him feel an unprecedented fear. He did not care whether Long Chen would kill him or not. He was like a drowning man as he frantically grabbed at the purple light in all directions. He even screamed, "No, no, I am a Hongmeng living being. I have the Hongmeng power." No matter how hard he tried, he could not defeat Long Chen's current strength. Eventually, the purple light in his divine soul completely disappeared. His entire being was no different from a primal chaos god race's divine soul. The grayish-white color was obvious. Long Chen looked at Yumu and dispersed the Hongmeng purple light around him. He said coldly, "Look at yourself who wants to destroy the ancient saint divine world. Without the Hongmeng power, you are still a person of this world. Your divine soul is still the soul of a god race in the primal chaos starry sky of the ancient saint divine world." Yumu's divine soul seemed to be in a daze. He could only stare at his hands and the grayish-white soul in a daze. Long Chen looked at Yu Mu deeply. He had no intention of killing Yu Mu at this moment. It would be a piece of cake for him to kill Yu Mu in his current state. What he wanted to do was to obtain more information about the Hongmeng inhabitants from Yu Mu. After all, it was not one person who had killed the ancient sacred world lord that day, but 3. The legacy that Yu Mu received was from a Hongmeng creature who had perished together with the ancient sacred sector master. There was another reason. Long Chen had to figure out the reason. What was the real purpose of the 3 spirits of the primordial chaos? Yu Mu had just obtained the power of a sector lord, so why did he only want to destroy this world? Long Chen ignored Yu Mu. His entire body soared into the air, gradually reaching the highest point in the sky. The highest of the heavens, the master of a realm. Long Chen took a deep breath and grabbed at the air with his right hand. Inextinguishable Taoist laws appeared in the sky as he said calmly, "The primal chaos celestial tribe was born from the creation of the ancient saint divine world. After today's battle, all the grudges of the past shall be written off. In the name of the Realm Lord, I reconstruct the inextinguishable Tao law and establish an eternal order." Rumble. Boundless Taoist laws rose and fell as a rain of light of various colors swept through every inch of space. Long Chen's voice spread throughout the primal chaos starry sky along with the rain of light and landed on the blessed land of the continent. The endless war came to an end at this moment. At this moment, the endless slaughter was finally over. The inextinguishable Tao law reconstructed the ancient saint divine world, and peace returned to the primal chaos celestial tribe. Many primal chaos celestial tribe god emperors who had helped Long Chen walked out of the dust. Their cultivation bases returned like the tide. One by one, the primal chaos celestial tribe god emperors knelt on the ground and recited the name of the ancient saint with pious expressions. Far away in the void, a birdcage appeared on the ancient saint divine world's continent. There were carvings all over it, and countless starlight condensed inside. It was a human heart. Pieces of flesh flew up from heaven and earth, as if they had transcended time and space to appear anew. Long Chen's eyes seemed to have transcended the ages. Primal chaos dragon bones broke out of his body, and drops of blood flowed out like a long river. Tears of blood flowed out of his disdainful eyes. His voice was trembling to the extreme, and he knelt down in the air. In the name of Long Chen, I, ancient saint divine master, reconstruct my body and reconstruct the cycle of reincarnation. Long Chen's ancient saint inheritance, which he had used to break through one realm after another, was completely revealed at this moment. Countless blood, flesh, and internal organs seemed to have transcended time and space. An imposing body gradually condensed in front of Long Chen. Tong Tian and the Golden Lion Emperor knelt on the ground with bloodshot eyes when they saw this scene. Countless primal chaos celestial tribe god emperors walked out of the dust and obtained the cultivation bases that had been added to Long Chen's body. When they saw this scene, they all knelt on the ground. "Welcome back, ancient saint. Welcome back, ancient saint. Welcome back, ancient saint." The Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor's body completely condensed amidst their voices. A ray of light pulsed in Long Chen's dragon palace. It actually broke out of his body and fused with this body. The Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor's body's cultivation base rose at a visible rate. With Long Chen's Ancient Saint Divine Emperor's inheritance, he instantly reached the cultivation level of a titled Emperor Lord. The confusion in his eyes was completely dispelled. His entire aura suddenly changed. The void around him rumbled like thunder. When Long Chen saw this, he also bowed deeply and performed a master-disciple ritual. The Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor looked at Long Chen. His hands trembled uncontrollably. His eyes were filled with gratification. Good, good, the Golden Lion Emperor watched as the Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor walked towards Long Chen. He waved his hand and ordered everyone to leave. The two of them bowed towards Long Chen and the Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor. The Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor was their martial ancestor. Long Chen was their martial uncle. They should be present at this moment. Long Chen was a realm lord, yet he was still bowing to the Lord Ancient Saint Divine Emperor. This caused the two of them to be shocked. The price of using the laws of a world to reverse time and space and reconstruct the cycle of reincarnation was definitely not as simple as they thought. When the Realm Lord arrived beside Long Chen, he immediately captured Yu Mu's divine soul. The four of them looked at each other and laughed. Long Chen said, "Come, let's go to my house. There will be a banquet today." After that, he waved his hand towards the people from the School of Imperial Studies. "Bring my father and the others to Shanghai City. Bring your Grand Elder to the banquet as well." The people from the School of Imperial Studies nodded and quickly disappeared. When Long Chen waved his hand, the four of them seemed to have crossed through space. In an instant, they were standing in the City Lord's mansion. The moment the four of them appeared, one God Emperor after another broke through space. They only retreated when they saw Long Chen. They didn't know that Long Chen was the Realm Lord. They only knew that he was the man of the City Lord, Unveil. Unveil and Qing Xian rushed over in just a few breaths. Zhang Lanyue followed closely behind. Long Chen looked at the two of them and his voice started to tremble. He couldn't even speak clearly. I can revive her. I want to revive her here. Long Chen, did not let her down in this life." When Qing Xian, Unveil and Zhang Lanyue didn't show any signs of jealousy. Instead, they started to cry. They knew that Yi Hailan was Long Chen's obsession. He had lived two lives. Long Chen didn't want to let her down. Yi Hailan's body and an immortal coffin appeared in the courtyard. Long Chen still remembered what he said that day. If Yi Hailan didn't live, he wouldn't enter the immortal sect. Chapter 1397. Yi Hailan slowly stood up from the coffin. For a moment, Long Chen was unable to control himself. He rushed forward and held her tightly in his arms. For so many years, Long Chen rarely mentioned Yi Hailan in front of others, but Yi Hailan was his deepest obsession. In his previous life, Yi Hailan died because of him. In this life, Yi Hailan also died because of him. Now that he was the lord of a realm, he naturally wouldn't have any regrets. Even if he had to sacrifice everything, he wouldn't hesitate. Everyone was happy to see Yi Hailan come back to life. But no one knew as well as the ancient Saint World Lord how much of a price one had to pay to bring someone back to life. Long Chen was the first to come back to life, then he revived Yi Hailan. Ku had lost at least half of his lifespan. To a realm lord, this kind of lifespan was huge. Yi Hailan felt Long Chen's body temperature and couldn't help but tremble. She could still remember the day she died to save Long Chen. She didn't say anything. Long Chen spoke first. "From today onwards, I won't allow you to leave my side, not even for a moment." After he spoke, Yi Hailan didn't reply, but he didn't refuse. She allowed Long Chen to hold her in his arms. Everyone slowly retreated, and a grand banquet was about to begin. Unveil and Qing Xian pulled Yi Hailan away. Yi Hailan didn't refuse. Although she was proud, she also wanted to know what Long Chen had done all these years and how he could bring her back to life. Long Chen's parents didn't even know that their son had reached such a level. The only thing they knew was that Long Chen's thoughts were completely clear. He just wanted to live a peaceful life with his family. This made them very happy. The banquet lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The entire Shanghai city was immersed in the joy of this banquet. The banquet was about to end. The ancient sacred world lord, Tong Tian, and the Golden Lion Emperor found Long Chen. They had yet to speak. Long Chen raised his glass. Long Chen said, "From today onwards, I will no longer be the realm lord of the ancient Saint Divine World. Please take care of me." He didn't want to continue with all of this. At this moment, he just wanted to accompany his wife and his clansmen and live on. Everything in the ancient sacred heavenly world could be left to others. His heart finally calmed down, and he wanted to calm down as much as possible. Thinking back, he had missed out on too much. That kind of life of killing day and night had already exhausted him. He looked at the ancient Saint World Lord and bowed deeply. The spirits of Hongmeng were already in the hands of the ancient sacred world master. In the end, the ancient Saint World Overlord let out a long sigh. He didn't open his mouth and continued drinking with Long Chen. Nothing needed to be said. A few days later, the entire city lord's mansion was empty. Yun gave up everything and left with Long Chen. The news of Long Chen becoming the realm lord and his battle with Yu Mu spread throughout the ancient sacred heavenly world in a short month. With this news and the battle that day, the Imperial College became a mysterious power that everyone in the ancient sacred heavenly world knew about. Long Chen seemed to have become a legend. He rose up like a comet, but after becoming a sector lord, he disappeared without a trace. His life was gradually known by everyone. On the ancient sacred heavenly world, a statue built with Long Chen as the model was erected. The towering statue reached the clouds and was immeasurably tall. Every day, countless people would come to pay their respects. Many people even comprehended Tao laws under the statue. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, a few hundred years had passed. In the chaotic space, on a blue planet, Long Chen and his clansmen lived here. This was originally an ordinary planet. There weren't many ores and resources here, but it had a vast ocean and beautiful scenery. In these few hundred years they enjoyed the most peaceful life. All the clansmen were personally taught by Long Chen. Everyone's lifespan had exceeded 10,000 years. In these few hundred years there were people who tried to get close to this planet. However, without exception, they were sent out of the star field the moment they got close. These were the happiest days of Long Chen's life. He had never felt so relaxed. He wanted to live like this forever. He stood on the vast ocean and looked at the towering wave. For some reason, he gradually frowned. In the end, he sighed and didn't say a word. His relaxed life wasn't as simple as he thought. The spirits of Hongmeng had always been a thorn in his heart that he could not pull out. Yu Mu alone had the power to destroy the ancient sacred heavenly world. How many Hongmeng beings were there outside the heavenly world? Would these people come back? If they came back, would they still be like Yu Mu, who only wanted to slaughter the entire ancient sacred heavenly world? After an unknown amount of time on the ocean, Qing Xian and the others saw Long Chen from afar. The girls looked at each other. They felt the uneasiness in Long Chen's heart. These hundreds of years had been the best years of their lives. Even if these days were endless, they wouldn't feel bored. Zhan Lanyue, who was wearing a blue dress, came behind Long Chen. She slashed her sword at Long Qing. However, Long Chen revealed a smile and turned around to pull her into his embrace. Qing Xian and the others arrived one after another with smiles on their faces. Only Yi Heilan's face was still cold. She stared at Long Chen and said, "You have something on your mind." Long Chen looked at Yi Heilan's cold face and shook his head. He didn't answer. For hundreds of years, Yi Heilan had been with him every day. Their relationship was almost the same as Yun Mei and the others. Long Chen was about to answer when he suddenly frowned. He looked into the depths of the starry sky. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. He seemed to know that this day would come, but he didn't expect it to come so quickly. Yun Mei and the others looked at where Long Chen disappeared and said, "He may be leaving again. This time, none of us may be able to stay by his side. But I will stay here and wait for the day he comes back. These hundreds of years will eventually become our eternal years in the future." Outside the starry sky, the person who came was none other than Tong Tian. When Tong Tian saw Long Chen, He bowed respectfully. Long Chen quickly helped him up and said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite with me." Before Tong Tian said anything, Long Chen said, "Why are you looking for me today?" Tong Tian's face suddenly became uneasy and awkward. He hesitated for a long time and said, "Yu Mu has spoken." Tong Tian didn't say anything else. He didn't even try to persuade Long Chen. He left a jade slip. Long Chen looked at the jade slip and took it with a bitter smile. Tong Tian bowed deeply again and disappeared into the void. Long Chen returned to the blue star again. Chapter 1398. When Long Chen returned to the blue planet, everyone acted as if nothing had happened. However, Qing Xian and the others knew that Long Chen's heart had been moved. Yi Hailan took the lead and said coldly, "Why don't you open it and take a look?" Long Chen waved his right hand and the jade scroll appeared in his hand. He said, "Some things have to be done. But if I don't know, then I will never do it." Perhaps there would be an end to these days. Whose life didn't have vigor? We would live like this and then die. Perhaps. It wasn't impossible. After hearing Long Chen's words, they all fell silent. Qing Xian just walked to Long Chen and nodded. As always, she supported all of his decisions, even if they had to stay here or die tomorrow. She never cared about how rough the road ahead was, or whether there was a road ahead. She only knew to walk behind Long Chen, whether it was right or wrong. No one took the jade scroll in Long Chen's hand. Long Chen didn't throw the jade scroll in his hand away. He didn't know how to do it. Even though his cultivation had become the strongest in the ancient sacred god world, he still couldn't make a choice between love and righteousness. He could lead these people to live together and eventually die of old age. But where should the countless creatures of the ancient sacred god world go? Were they also prepared to welcome the end of the world? Long Chen didn't know, and he didn't want to think about it. Yi Hailan suddenly rushed forward. She shattered the jade scroll with her sword and said to Long Chen, "If you want to do it, then do it. Don't make me look down on you. Our lives shouldn't be like today or tomorrow, and it shouldn't be like the past hundreds of years. Peace shouldn't be an excuse to escape. As Yun Mei said, these hundreds of years of happiness will become our eternal years." Everyone nodded. Each of them was the person Long Chen cared about the most. They knew that Long Chen might not want to leave, but he had to. Otherwise, their future might only be a few hundred years or a few thousand years, but it would eventually come to an end. Along with them would be the living beings of the entire God realm. Perhaps this was also the reason why Long Chen had been unwilling to leave behind an heir for hundreds of years. Long Chen looked at the women in front of him, and his heart was filled with emotions. Suddenly, he bowed to the women with his body as a man. He had never seen the identity of a master of a realm on him before. Ever since Yi Hai was resurrected, he no longer seemed to be a cultivator. Today, he had no choice but to embark on this never-ending path again. Perhaps this was the path of cultivation. When he walked on this path, there was no way out. After a bow, Long Chen didn't say goodbye. His figure disappeared. This time, he didn't head straight to the place he was heading to. Instead, he was like a gust of wind that swept through the entire ancient sacred divine world. He saw countless families that had lived similar lives to his for 100 years. He also saw countless Xiozhi risking their lives for the sake of realms and battle strength. He also saw countless worshippers kneeling before his statue. It was as if he was the pillar of the entire ancient sacred divine world. The unstable ancient sacred divine world was now in order once again under the condensation of Tao laws. In just a few hundred years of development, it had far surpassed the ancient sacred era. Several days later, Long Chen finally arrived in the chaotic starry sky. In the chaotic starry sky, the various races of the chaotic starry sky were no longer fighting. There was a mountain in the center of the 5 great star fields, a mountain that stood tall in the void. The top of the mountain couldn't be seen, and the bottom couldn't be seen. There were only the words, "Ancient Sacred," on the mountain. Long Chun came to this mountain. He stood at the top of the mountain. It was as if he could see the entire chaotic starry sky. This was now known as the highest place in the ancient sacred divine world. It was also where the ancient sacred lived. There was nothing at the top of the mountain. It was as empty as a desolate desert. Long Chun didn't use his spiritual force, nor did he look for Skirich or his master. His gaze was completely attracted by a person who was a few thousand meters away from the top of the mountain. This person carried a shovel on his back, and his clothes were tattered. There was also a child beside him. The child and the man chatted and laughed as they each picked up a shovel and knocked on the mountain. Long Chun walked forward and stopped in front of the man. The man glanced at Long Chun and shook his head with a smile. He turned back and waved to the child. "You go back first. I have something to say to this uncle." When Long Chun saw this person, his gaze became complicated. This person was none other than Yu Mu, who almost destroyed the entire ancient sacred divine world. At this moment, he seemed to have become an ordinary person. An ordinary person who mined this sacred mountain. Yu Mu didn't have any cultivation power on him. That day, Long Chun had only stripped him of all his primordial energy, destroyed his physical body, and suppressed his cultivation. But now, Yu Mu didn't have any spirit power to speak of. Yu Mu seemed to have seen through Long Chun's thoughts. He smiled and walked to the side. He put down the shovel in his hand and sat on a green rock. He gestured for Long Chun to sit down and said, "I thought you wouldn't come. I've already told the ancient sacred divine world lord everything I know." Long Chun landed beside Yu Mu. He didn't ask about Hong Meng. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing here? Since you don't have any cultivation and master didn't kill you, it's as good as sparing your life." Yu Mu shook his head and stomped on the green rock. "I can escape death, but I can't escape punishment. I have to move this mountain to regain my freedom. Actually, I should be thanking you. If it wasn't for you, I would have destroyed this world." Long Chun looked at Yu Mu and didn't have any intention to continue asking. He only glanced at the child who was playing in the distance. He knew that this child was the fetters in Yu Mu's heart. "Take care of yourself," Long Chun said and slowly stood up. Yu Mu suddenly said, "Leave quickly. You might be the last hope to save this world." When Long Chun appeared again, he was already beside the ancient sacred divine world lord and Tong Tian. The three of them were standing at the edge of the ancient sacred divine world. They had a helpless expression on their faces. "Greetings, Master." Long Chun bowed to the ancient sacred divine world lord. The ancient sacred divine world lord couldn't help but nod. He looked at Long Chun and smiled. "I knew you'd come back. Now we want to contact the other divine worlds. If the ancient sacred divine world is in danger of being destroyed, then they should be too." Long Chun nodded slightly. He naturally knew what they were trying to do. They wanted to merge the various divine worlds into one. In the past, this might have been impossible. However, it was different now. The appearance of Hong Meng's living beings might not be limited to the ancient sacred divine world. Chapter 1399. The ancient Saint Sector Master and Tong Tian had been forcing Yu Mu to tell them about the Hong Meng beings for hundreds of years. It was only a few decades ago that he spoke. All he did was raise a condition. The condition was that child. That was his son. The ancient Saint Sector Master did not have the power of Hong Meng. Hence, he could not become the Sector Master after Long Chun. However, his understanding of the undying Tao law was not any weaker than Long Chun. He helped Yu Mu reconstruct the child's body and told Yu Mu how to revive him. Yu Mu was the complete opposite of the ancient Saint Sector Master. Although he had the power of a Sector Master, he could not obtain the recognition of the Tao law. Moreover, Long Chen was suppressing the world. The Tao law in the world could not be used by him. The ancient Saint Sector Master pointed out a path for him, which was to give up all his cultivation and rely on the power of a Sector Master to transcend the reincarnation Tao law. Yu Mu said that there should not be many Hong Meng beings in the ancient Saint Divine world. The reason they want to destroy this world is because of a magical land in Hong Meng. No one knows what that place is. However, the power it emits is gradually spreading in the Hong Meng extreme realm. Tong Tian and Tong Tian told Long Chen everything they learned from Yu Mu. It turned out that Yu Mu was the name of the person who died together with the ancient Saint Sector Master. They were originally 3 brothers, and they were also the first to discover this magical land. The ancient Saint Divine world and other divine worlds became the stumbling blocks in their path. Hence, they stepped into this world to destroy it. However, they did not expect the ancient Saint Sector Master to have the power to fight against them. Although he died fighting against 3 people, one of them died and 2 of them were severely injured. The ancient Saint Sector Master turned around and stared at Long Chen with a solemn expression. They might not know that the reason why I was able to fight against 3 people and drag one of them down with me was because of the Primal Chaos Golden Code and the Dragon Palace in my body. I obtained the Primal Chaos Golden Code from Hong Meng. This item might have come from the magical land they mentioned. Long Chen took a deep breath and walked to the front of the crowd. He took out a picture scroll. This was the item that he had obtained that day. Although it was a damaged item, it was enough for him to find the other God Realms artifacts. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he had actually walked out of the ancient sacred divine world with a single step. The ancient Saint World Lord and the other 2 stared at this scene in shock. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Stepping out of the ancient Saint Divine world and entering Hong Meng, one would have to endure the suppression of Hong Meng's power. Even if the ancient Saint Divine world's World Lord had once possessed monstrous battle prowess, he wouldn't be able to last long in there. Now that Long Chen had entered, he didn't seem to be suppressed in the slightest. It was just as they thought. The key to entering Hong Meng was the power of Hong Meng. The power of Hong Meng and the power of chaos were like 2 completely different powers. If the power within one's body wasn't enough to contend against the outside world, one would be crushed to death. The power of Hong Meng's power was so strong that even world lords would find it hard to walk out. Long Chen nodded to the few of them and said, "I'll go take a look. Don't act rashly, Wang." Long Chen instantly disappeared on the spot. He walked into the boundless purple light and gradually disappeared without a trace. It was as if he had walked into the darkness. The dense purple light seemed to have become a part of the darkness. Long Chen frowned slightly. He realized that the Tao laws of the ancient sacred divine world had no effect here. He relied on the senses of the flower scroll to quickly rush into the distance. In the space without any light, Long Chen didn't even know how long he had been walking. Gradually, the ancient sacred God world behind him, which was like a leaf in the ocean, completely disappeared without a trace. His speed became faster and faster. Only when a flash of light appeared in front of him did he stop. That was where the flower scroll was pointing. However, there was nothing here other than a beam of light that was about to dissipate. Long Chen's frown grew deeper and deeper. He continued to walk in another direction. Ancient Sacred Divine World, 30 years later. The ancient Sacred World Lord and Tong Tian waited for Long Chen's return. Long Chen's expression was extremely ugly. He directly led the group to Yu Mu and asked coldly, "Have the other 2 started to act again?" Yu Mu fanned his child and said softly, "When I stepped into the World Lord level, I already sent them a message. According to the time flow of Hong Meng's extreme realm and this place, there should be another 100 years before they arrive." 100 years? The ancient Sacred World Lord and Tong Tian were confused. If the 2 of them came immediately, Even if the time flow of the two worlds was different, the difference wouldn't be so long. This time, Yumu didn't answer. Instead, it was Long Chen who said, 100 years for Hong Meng's extreme realm should be 10 years. In these 10 years, the other two Hong Meng beings are enough to destroy the last divine world. Hiss. Long Chen's words made Yumu stop fanning himself. Tong Tian, the Golden Lion Emperor, and even the ancient Sacred World Lord couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. When the two of them escaped that day, they didn't know that the ancient Sacred World Lord had also died in that battle. That was why the ancient Sacred Divine World was so peaceful until now. Now, it seemed that this peace was about to be over. Since they had received the news from Yumu, they would definitely come here after destroying the other divine world. Everyone's gaze fell on Long Chen. Long Chen's battle strength had already surpassed the original ancient Sacred World Lord. Could he fight the two of them alone? Yumu suddenly stood up and took a deep breath. He said to Long Chen, with your strength, you can indeed defeat them again. However, I'm afraid that you won't end up any better than the ancient Sacred World Lord. Moreover, so what if I kill them? After the various divine worlds are destroyed, the fantasy land will be exposed. At that time, it won't be just 2 or 3 small fries who will come here. Small fries? Yumu's words left the Golden Lion Emperor, Tong Tian, and even the ancient Sacred World Lord speechless. Were they really small fries in Hong Meng, who had the strength to fight the Realm Lord? The three of them thought about it and understood. According to Yumu, the Hong Meng force was the root of everything. The creatures in the Hong Meng extreme realm were born in such an environment. One could only imagine how terrifying it was. Long Chen stared at Yumu and said, "Do you have any ideas?" Yumu said in a deep voice, "We must find a way to create another Realm Lord. This person must have battle strength on par with you and be able to withstand the Hong Meng force." The Golden Lion Emperor snorted coldly and said, "We didn't give you our lifespan so that you can ask for cultivation. We will never return the Hong Meng force to you." Long Chen frowned. The Hong Meng force could be endlessly derived. Even a strand of it was inexhaustible. However, Chapter 1400. Just as everyone was looking at Yumu, he suddenly shook his head and chuckled. He walked back to the child's side and continued fanning the feather fan to drive away the mosquitoes. He murmured, "I no longer have the heart to become stronger. Even though I once obtained primordial energy, I can no longer do it now. You can toss a beam of Hong Meng's power to the people of the world to try. After all, I was just a member of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe." His words made the ancient Saint Emperor and the others nod slightly, as if they felt that it was not a bad idea. In the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe, all 9th stage God Emperors could try. Once they fused with this item, they would be able to reach the Heavenly Court. With Long Chen's support, they would be able to reach the Realm Lord level. The power of Hong Meng was an unparalleled treasure to everyone. Long Chen pondered for a moment, but he could only nod in agreement. This matter concerned the survival of this realm. Furthermore, the power of Hong Meng could break through the restriction of only one Realm Lord. Of course, right now, the Realm Lord level was only one realm. Apart from Long Chen, no one else could truly control the ancient Sacred Divine Tribe. Many days later, a beam of purple light appeared at the intersection of the 5 Primal Chaos star field. The ancient Sacred Emperor was the one guarding this place. The Golden Lion Emperor and Tong Tian sent out a message to the entire Primal Chaos star field. Anyone who could fuse with the power of Hong Meng would be crowned by Long Chen. With the power of the ancient Sacred Divine Tribe, they would be able to reach the Realm Lord level. This news caused a huge commotion in the Primal Chaos star field. Countless members of the Primal Chaos Divine Tribe rushed over. The craziest thing was that there was no mention of the cultivation base required to try. In that case, once someone could fuse with this purple light, even an ordinary person could become a realm lord-level existence. More and more people rushed over like a sea of clouds. Long Chen and the others frowned. Before they could attack, he said in a low voice, "You have to be prepared to lose your lives. This light doesn't belong to the ancient sacred divine tribe." As soon as he finished speaking, someone couldn't help but instinctively touch the light. Crackle! The man instantly turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. Even so, there was still an endless stream of people, advancing dauntlessly. The heavenly light god's bloodline. The heavenly death god's bloodline. The heavenly god of space and time. Countless primal chaos divine race experts rushed towards Huang Xiaolong in a frenzy. There were even Ninth Order God Emperors among them. Whether it was peak Ninth Order God Emperors or Sovereign Emperors, all of them died the moment they came into contact with Hong Meng's power. Long Chen's face became more and more unsightly. Before he could do anything, he was stopped by the Lord of the Ancient Saint Emperor. The Lord of the Ancient Saint Emperor said, "This is the only way to save the Ancient Saint Divine World. If they want to obtain something, they have to pay a corresponding price. This is their own choice, that's right. This was their own choice." So many people had died, but they were still advancing dauntlessly, as if they wanted to fill up the Yellow Springs Road and become the ones stepping on the corpses. Day after day passed. In just 3 days, more than 100,000 members of the chaotic god tribe had died, but there were still countless more. Finally, Long Chen could not hold it in any longer. He directly soared into the sky and released his aura, pushing the hundreds of thousands of people a million li away. His voice reverberated through the starry sky as he said coldly, "This matter ends here. From today onwards, if you have not stepped into the Ninth Order God Emperor realm, no one is allowed to come here and try to fuse with Hong Meng's power." A Ninth Order God Emperor had the strength of a world overlord. If one wanted to become a world overlord, they had to possess Hong Meng's power. If they were willing to sacrifice themselves for the future, Long Chen could accept it. However, he could no longer watch so many people die without a proper burial ground regardless of their own lives. Everyone was unwilling to accept this outcome. It was as if the purple light had an unprecedented temptation. However, no one dared to go against Long Chen's will. The world overlord, below one person and above millions. As the matter gradually calmed down, the Lord of the Ancient Saint Emperor and the other two could only shake their heads helplessly. Long Chen was about to turn around and leave. If he needed someone to hold up the sky, he would give it a try. Just as he was about to leave, he saw an old man and a young man rushing out from the crowd. "Stop, stop!" The old man shouted loudly as if he wanted to stop the young man in front of him. However, the young man was unmoved and continued to rush towards the purple light. Long Chen suddenly laughed. The moment the two of them walked out from the crowd, Long Chen noticed them. The two of them were Zhu Zijua and Zhu Ziyin. Buzz. Before Zhu Ziyin could get close to the purple light, he was stopped by Long Chen. Long Chen's figure flickered, and he was already standing beside Zhu Ziyin. He smiled and said, "You don't have a Ninth Order God Emperor realm. Go back and cultivate with your grandfather." Zhu Ziyin was still the same as before. He glared fiercely at Long Chen and snorted, "I want to become a world overlord. You said that I'm talented, why can't I try?" Zhu Ziyin scolded Long Chen in such an unbridled manner that the Chaos God race experts around were stunned. Everyone quickly knelt on the ground as if they were afraid of Long Chen's anger. They revered Long Chen's name, but little did they know that Long Chen was not angry at Zhu Ziyin. Instead, he admired Zhu Ziyin. He brought Zhu Ziyin and Zhu Zijua back to the ancient saint's sacred mountain. After they left, there were Ninth Order God Emperors who tried to refine the purple light, but in the end they were all turned into ashes. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Finally, the purple light became something that no one cared about. There were even some who speculated that the ancient Saint World Overlord had purposely used it to wash away the Chaos God race's strength. The person who spread the rumor died before he could finish his words. Since then, no one dared to spread such nonsense. They knew that if Long Chen wanted to wash the cards, there was no need for him to use such a clumsy method. In this 1 month, Zhu Ziyin had been trying to refine the purple light day and night. In just 1 month, he had escaped from the book 23 times. The ancient Saint Emperor's face was dark and gloomy. He was in the hall with Long Chen and the others, but he couldn't calm down. Now that the purple light is just a decoration, it's impossible to continue using a 9th Order God Emperor as the target. Even though the Rain Tomb had merged with the Hong Meng's inheritance, he had yet to reach the 9th Order God Emperor realm. This is the only way. Long Chen shook his head and rejected the ancient Saint Emperor's suggestion. He said solemnly, "If we open up the Hong Meng's strength and the Chaos God race can't refine a single person after 100 years, it's the same as destroying the entire Chaos God race. Rather than that, why don't I fight the final battle alone?" Sai, Tongtian and the Golden Lion Emperor sighed helplessly. Chapter 1401. The ancient sacred divine mountain was completely silent. Yu Mu seemed to have seen through everything. He was always with his child day and night, as if nothing had anything to do with him. Year after year passed. Zhu Ziyin never left the divine mountain. He had already tried to escape from here 700 times. This was a stubborn and rebellious child. The more one tried to stop him, the more he wanted to do it. Unfortunately, his enemy was Long Chen, and Long Chen was the master of a realm. Every time Zhu Ziyin stepped into the range of the divine mountain, he would immediately reappear at the top of the mountain. Long Chen watched Zhu Ziyin being sent back to the divine mountain, and suddenly thought of someone. That person was probably even more stubborn than Zhu Ziyin. That person was Jian Shisan. Jian Shisan had separated from Long Chen and the others in the name of swordsmanship. In the blink of an eye, there had been no news of him. This feeling was somewhat wrong. After all, according to Jian Shisan's personality, unless he died, all the powerful swordsmen in the entire chaotic starry sky were bound to be defeated by him. He might be the best person to refine the power of Hong Meng. Long Chen disappeared on the spot. No one knew where he would appear. The moment he stopped, even he himself was completely stunned. The scene in front of him was very different from what he had imagined Jian Shisan to live in. There was only a bamboo house here, located upstream of a stream. The mountain range was covered with a rare blue-patterned plum blossom. Long Chen slowly walked towards the house. He sensed that there was only one person inside, and it was a woman. The woman seemed to have noticed Long Chen walking out of the house. When she saw Long Chen's appearance, her face instantly turned pale, and she retreated to the wall of the house. After a few breaths, she reacted and hurriedly bowed to Long Chen, saying, "This little girl pays her respects to the realm master." She had never seen Long Chen before. But she had seen the supreme statue in the chaotic starry sky. She had never thought that the realm lord would grace her with his presence. Long Chen looked at the woman deeply, as if he knew everything about her. Then, he said lightly, "I'm here to look for Jian Shisan. He should be in the forest behind the house." He didn't seem to have any intention of entering the forest. Instead, he waved his hand and a set of tables and chairs appeared in front of him. He then sat down and waited. The woman remained kneeling on the ground, not daring to move at all. Long Chen didn't seem to have any intention of letting him get up. He even glanced at him from time to time. A moment later, sure enough, Jian Shisan emerged from the hills behind the house. The firewood on his back was as tall as a small hill. Long Chen's attention was not on the mountain, but on his hands. His right hand, which had once held onto the hilt of his sword without regard for his life, was now holding a rusty black iron hatchet. Jian Shisan was startled when he saw Long Chen. He bowed from afar and shouted, "Greetings, master." Long Chen snorted and looked back at the woman. "What, is this the sword you've cultivated?" Jian Shisan seemed to have sensed Long Chen's thoughts. He quickly stood up and walked to the woman's side, pulling her up. He smiled and said, "You don't have to be so reserved." "He's my master." The woman stood up and nodded. Her every movement was beautiful and moving. Long Chen stared at the woman and suddenly said coldly, "Did I allow you to get up?" Plop! The woman knelt down on the ground again, as if a mountain was pressing down on her shoulders. At the same time, Long Chen stared at Jian Shisan. "I'm asking you, where's the sword you've cultivated?" Jian Shisan looked at Long Chen's anger and shook his head. "I don't cultivate the sword anymore. Otherwise, why wouldn't I have gone to Master's battle with the Realm Lord? The two of them had walked all the way here. Whether it was the Battle of the Peak in the Corpse World or the Battle of Life and Death, Jian Shisan had crossed the boundary to come. All of this was still vivid in Long Chen's mind. Long Chen took a deep breath and stared at the woman. "You gave up cultivating the sword because of this woman? Do you know him?" The woman's face was extremely pale. Her body couldn't help but tremble violently because of fear. Jian Shisan quickly knelt on the ground and hugged her. "Master, you're exaggerating. Whether I cultivate the sword or not has nothing to do with him. This is also my personal matter." Jian Shisan's voice gradually lowered. Long Chen stared at the woman with burning eyes and said coldly, "You don't know. Let me tell you. I can show you her entire life." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen's eyes outlined the outline of the light. In an instant, endless Tao laws interweaved in the sky, drawing the momentum of heaven and earth. The woman's figure turned into an illusion. Whoosh! The moment the woman's figure appeared, Jian Shisan's hatchet was already stained with blood. He didn't cultivate the sword anymore. But his speed was still not slow. At least, he dug out his own eyes in front of Long Chen. Long Chen stared at this scene in a daze. His mind fell to the bottom, and he only felt empty. The scene in the sky gradually disappeared without a trace. He stared at Jian Shisan, who had lost his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "You disappoint me. I'll give you 30 years. If you can't pass this tribulation, I'll personally send you to your grave." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen's figure had disappeared. Jian Shisan nestled in the woman's arms and bowed deeply to the place where Long Chen originally stood. The woman's voice was so low that it couldn't be heard. Why do you have to do this for me? Even if you see my past, it's okay." Jian Shisan shook his head and said, "Your past should be told to me personally. It won't be too late to tell me when you feel it's appropriate." The woman covered her mouth and giggled. She looked at the place where Long Chen disappeared, but there was still some fear in her eyes. Jian Shisan was still holding the hatchet in his hand. The blood on it seemed to still be warm. The recovery speed of his self-mutilated eyes was surprisingly slow under the effects of his divine power. The woman beside him even joked with him, "You look pretty good like this." "Really? Then I'll just be blind." He still remembered that day when the woman said that his sword dance was too ugly. He threw away the sword in his hand and forgot the sword in his heart. At this moment, he only had the hatchet in his hand and the woman beside him in his heart. He could live without his sword, but he couldn't live without her. Long Chen returned to the Divine Mountain. So many years had passed. For the first time, he was furious. A loud roar shook the entire chaotic starry sky. It made the chaotic gods of the 5 major galaxies tremble in fear and panic. After the roar, the faces of Yi Hailon and Qing Xian appeared in his mind. Then he smiled bitterly. Compared to Jian Shisan, he was really much luckier. The woman he loved was at least worth protecting with his life, but the woman Jian Shisan loved would only take his life. Over the next few days, The master of Saint Emperor Gu and the others discussed with Long Chen again to release the restrictions on Hongmeng's power. But Long Chen refused again. He left the Divine Mountain after giving some instructions and returned to the Blue Planet. He was ready to face all of this. Before the storm. Chapter 1402. Long Chen returned to the Blue Planet. The arrival time of the Hongmeng creatures was almost certain. He didn't make any more preparations. He knew that nothing in the ancient sacred divine world could cause any harm to the Hongmeng creatures. Only he, who also had the Hongmeng power, could fight them. What he needed to do was to use all his power. Even if the entire chaotic divine world was destroyed, this battle had to continue. Long Chen's heart was heavy. He knew that the chances of victory in this battle were less than 50%. It was already extremely difficult for him to defeat Yumu that day. Now he had to face two creatures from Hongmeng, whose combat power might not be weaker than Yumu. It was too difficult for him to fight against two of them alone. In his heart, he was already prepared. If things really went to the end, he would even choose to return the Hongmeng power to Yumu. The Rain Tomb would become their last straw of hope. At least before he obtained the Hongmeng power, Yumu was still a part of the ancient sacred divine world. Decades passed in the blink of an eye. Long Chen was ready to set off for the sacred mountain. Until now, no one had integrated the Hongmeng power, so Yumu was his only choice. If Yumu could join hands with him after regaining the Hongmeng power, they would have a chance of survival. On the sacred mountain, when Long Chen returned, Zhu Ziyin was still trying to integrate the Hongmeng power. Not only that, Yumu was actually standing by his side. When Long Chen's figure appeared in front of Yumu, Yumu suddenly said to him, "This child does have the possibility of integrating the Hongmeng power." Long Chen frowned instantly. He didn't look at Zhu Ziyin, but at Yumu. "You don't want to get the Hongmeng power anymore, right?" Yumu nodded and didn't say anything. He picked up his shovel again and left. Long Chen looked at Yumu's back and replied, "If the ancient sacred divine world can survive this disaster, you don't have to dig mountains anymore. I'll give you a peaceful place to spend your old age." After Yumu left, Long Chen waved his hand and sent Zhu Ziyin to the Hongmeng light beam. Zhu Ziyin stepped forward. His grandfather, Zhu Zijua, was already extremely anxious. He frantically roared at Long Chen, not caring that Long Chen was already a sector lord. He only had his grandson in his heart. He didn't want Zhu Ziyin to have any profound power. He only hoped that Zhu Ziyin could live peacefully. However, Zhu Ziyin did not have such thoughts. His entire body was trembling with excitement. At this moment, he was no different from the others. The power of Hongmeng had attracted him to an unprecedented level. The moment Zhu Ziyin came into contact with the power of Hongmeng, the spiritual power in his entire body instantly collapsed. All of his cultivation and spirit energy disappeared without a trace in an instant. His body hadn't been destroyed yet. He opened his mouth wide and swallowed a fingernail-sized purple light. Hiss! Zhu Ziyin actually resisted the power of Hongmeng. Long Chen waved his hand and set up a formation to completely protect Zhu Ziyin. He sat cross-legged and began to refine the power of Hongmeng. It took a long time for the power of Hongmeng to enter the body. The Lord of Ancient Saint Emperor and Skirich were extremely excited. They couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. No matter what, as long as Zhu Ziyin was alive, they would have another chance of obtaining saint power. Long Chen was just about to turn and leave. Before he could walk out, he saw a divine light break through the air. Everyone's gaze turned to the light. It was a sword. A long sword with a dark glow. The sword didn't have a physical body, but it had a sword soul. This sword was Jian Shisan. After Jian Shisan appeared, he didn't seem to have any intention of greeting Long Chen. He transformed into a long sword and directly entangled and devoured the power of Hong Meng. Waves of spirit energy began to surge above the sword's soul. Jian Shisan had actually completely merged with the power of Hong Meng. One gave birth to two, two gave birth to three. Once the power of Hong Meng entered the body and merged successfully, no matter how much was merged, it would fill their bodies in a short period of time. Long Chen's gaze swept past Jian Shisan and Zhu Xin. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Today, I'll start refining the Tao Law for the two of you and help you reach the Realm Lord level. As Long Chen spoke, he grabbed the air with both hands. Endless Tao Law began to form. The two's cultivation flowed through his fingertip. Countless opportunities surrounded Jian Shisan and Zhu Xin in an instant. The two of them only woke up after a full year. The moment they woke up, the countless opportunities left behind by Long Chen entered their bodies and they fainted again. It felt as if they had slept for tens of thousands of years. The moment they opened their eyes again, it felt as if the entire world had become small. They felt as if they could release unprecedented power at will. The two of them glanced at each other. Naturally, they knew that their cultivation had reached the Emperor Lord level. Hong Meng's power had become their bridge. Long Chen, the Realm Lord, had become their nourishment. A realm that they would never be able to reach in their lifetime had been completely achieved in a short 1 or 2 years. They disappeared from where they were and reappeared on the sacred mountain. They arrived in front of Long Chen and knelt on the ground to greet him as their master and disciple. Although the two of them were realm lords, they could still feel the terrifying power coming from Long Chen's body. This feeling seemed to come from the soul. The stronger the cultivation, the more obvious the feeling. Long Chen's gaze first fell on Jian Shisan. He once again saw the extreme sword coldness in Jian Shisan's eyes. He knew. The Jian Shisan of the past had returned. That woman was his calamity, but at the same time, it was his good fortune. If she died, Jian Shisan would live. Long Chen looked at the two of them and said solemnly, I used the Tao laws of the entire ancient sacred divine world to attack. I gave you endless opportunities and relied on Hong Meng's power to step into the Realm Lord level. It was all for today. You might not know, but the ancient sacred divine world has always been at the brink of destruction. Now that you have enough power, you have to take on this responsibility. Long Chen slowly walked in front of the two of them. The two of them did not hesitate and nodded. In reality, they did not think about the survival of the ancient sacred divine world. They only knew that Long Chen's order was enough to make them fight with their lives. The three of them glanced at each other and disappeared from where they were. When they reappeared, they were at the edge of the ancient sacred divine world. The ancient sacred divine world's realm lord and the rest arrived one after another. They found that the three of them had already left the ancient sacred divine world and escaped into the boundless Hong Meng. The ancient sacred divine world's realm lord and the rest stared blankly at this scene and muttered, Hong Meng's extreme realm, the birthplace of all living things. Do they still have a chance to come back? Whether the ancient sacred divine world will be destroyed or not, it all falls on the shoulders of the three of them. Tong Tian and the Golden Lion Emperor took a deep breath and stared at the backs of the three of them. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.